Hello, everybody. Good evening, good afternoon, or even good morning, depending on where you are in the world. But here in London, it's evening. And David is with me here in the studio tonight for
Hello.
And we have a mixed program for you. And we're going to go from both extremes, really. We're going to debate some serious economic issues, but there will also be the next clip of who's tipping over the tipping point. So, David, you and me for the first evening session, going to round off day 3 of COP, or rather the antidote to COP, as we like to say. To start us off, we're going to run another episode of Who's Tipping Over the Tipping Point, the only quiz show that allows you to keep on laughing sustainably. And it's another episode where we will be looking at even more ridiculous inventions and the least needed products on the market. So let's kick off with our next show in that series.
Okay, hold on there. I will be with you in just a tick. And now going there, just inviting some people to join us on LinkedIn so that they can actually participate along. Well, okay. But as Richard is saying, I think what we want to do is to bring what we believe is a sane, serious economic angle to the discussions, and we have had some of the good news out of COP and things that people have been very much hoping for. In some ways, they've certainly front-loaded it. We'll certainly be discussing how we think about that, whether that's how we think is going to be the way that will save mankind, as it were, and what that is. But first, as always, we have Nico helping us along.
And welcome to Who's Tipping Over the Tipping Point. This is a comedy quiz show featuring various bits and aspects with the sole purpose of ensuring that you can keep on laughing sustainably, of course, nothing else. So with me today, I obviously have the other half, Dr. David Coe, but he's not the interesting bit because we have up in the cold depths of Scotland, we have Nico with us. And more importantly, we have Katie Critchlow with us. And from much sunnier part, we have Ian Kaplan with us. So, welcome. And the format here is a little bit loose, but we are supposed to score points based on various segments of the show. And we're going to start out looking at basically the most unsustainable products we could pick up. So I'm going to hand over to David, and he's going to send us off with the first product. And then we're going to have a little bit of a reasoning around why we love this product so much and what we see as a future for it. So, David, off you go. You get the first hit.
And maybe I'd love to give a little bit more of an introduction of the various people. So, you know, myself and Richard, we've come from very much a hardcore investment background. So we understand about how you persuade people to buy things they don't need. That's basically our skill, our superpower there. Nico, actually, he's living up in Scotland, so he's way up in the north, but he comes from Zimbabwe, which is way down in the south. So he represents that union between what people call the global north and the global south. Now, how that ended up in Scotland, I don't know, but maybe he'll tell us. And Katie has an illustrious career within the sustainability and actually within the commercial area of actually making the businesses to be how we dream of businesses becoming. And so she has that experience and maybe some of the cynicism that can color just how we can look at the products and really understand what goes on behind the scene. So thank you very much for everybody. And now let's bring on some of these things to this.
Oh, my favorite.
What is this?
This is, believe it or not, it's a banana slicer. So the whole idea is that you first, I gathered it by reading at the product instruction is you peel your banana, you put it on a slicing board, and then you bring out the banana slicer and you basically ram it across the banana, and then you have 12 perfectly sliced pieces of banana.
And then you take a fork and you mush it.
You could do that. That's obviously for the mushers out there, but there are those of us who like their pieces of banana. I mean,
okay, why do we need this? Okay,
why do we need it?
Why do we need this? Why do we?
I think this is one of we don't need it, and this is one of the things that is like sad today, is that we have so many things in our house that save a tiny amount of time. Probably finding that, because you only use it once every 6 months, finding it probably takes you more time than just cutting the banana with a knife. But there's so many things like that now, and you could literally fill your whole kitchen with, you know, air fryers and pressure cookers and George Foreman's and apple slicers and banana slicers, and you think it's weird, isn't it, that we're convinced that we need these things when, you know, we just get a knife out.
Yes. Yes. It's and Nico, what do you say? I mean, you know, bananas, I guess you must have grown up with bananas. You know, is this an improvement to the life?
We don't have time for that, for cutting stuff, man. If I'm starving, I'm just gonna eat the banana straight away.
Yeah, I got these.
Anyway, so, you know, there's no harm on that. So, like, yeah, yes, okay. I agree with Katie. We don't need this because it brings so many laziness. People become so lazy nowadays. You can't do anything. You know, I mean, the tin open up, all that stuff, you know, and people talk about obesity because you don't do anything. You don't exercise in your house. Everything it just works for you.
You don't even lift the knife 12 times.
Yeah, so we don't need that.
Yeah. I always think, like, you know, if we got somebody who lived in a place where they don't have all these gadgets, and you brought them to our kitchen or our kids' bedrooms where they're just full of teddies, you just think, what would somebody think? They'd be like, what the hell? Why? But we're convinced that it's a gonna have thing. There is one thing that goes around a banana, though, a banana saver that my kid uses to take his banana to school that stops him going squishy. That is genuinely useful, because I used to send a banana in every day and it would just come back this big squishy goo in the bottom of his bag. So things that actually, you know, stop food waste, great. But yeah, this, I don't know who needs that.
But what struck me the most when I picked this picture is, right, I don't spend a lot of time in the kitchen. Let us be clear about that. I'm not a great chef. I do very basic things and I don't do them particularly well. But I'm married to someone who's very good at this thing, so it evens out. But every now and then I find myself in the kitchen, right? And you can bet at various points, unless it involves only boiling water, there is an emergency. And I'm frantically looking for that particular utensil to get me through the next 50 seconds. But I cannot really see myself, you know, in that state saying, where is my banana slicer? You know, that frantic situation when I'm rambling to various drawers in the kitchen. I'm opening cupboards in desperation, trying to find the banana slicer, you know.
I should add,
also, now we're at the EU, our banana might be bent at a different angle, and it might.
Oh yeah. It probably wouldn't work anymore. You know, we got this too early. But I should add, I mean, Richard is the only person I know who doesn't peel a banana. He doesn't peel a banana. He has this really, really kind of macho approach where he takes a banana, he rips it in half. He literally just pulls it in half, and he squeezes the end like toothpaste.
Wow.
That's like proper monkey business, isn't it?
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's what I was saying.
The whole peeling process, I find it a little bit, I don't know, yucky. You know, you're breaking it, and then there's always some threads hanging, and there's stuff stuck on the banana. It's like, for a better word, I find, you know, peeling a banana, it's a bit unsavory, really. So you break it in two, you take a firm grip and you press it out, and then, yeah, a half a banana, you know, it's not a lot. You can do it in goes. It's like, why would I waste time peeling it and get my fingers yucky? You break it, no problem, and it's quick.
And I have to say, you have to all go home and try this when you have a banana. It takes a bit of practice, and if you don't do it with enough determination, you squish the banana in the peel, and then it's horrible.
I think I agree with.
It's a bit of practice.
I was saying I totally agree with Kate and everyone about how the monkeys and baboons, when they go to the field, they just grab it and stuff like that. Imagine if it was a crime scene, they'll never find anything. But if you're peeling it, there's so much evidence that someone has been there, And so it's a smart way. It's a smart way. I think this one should go for me.
This one should go. We don't need it because for me, you're going to take a fork to it and mush it up anyway. So you may as well just take a fork to it and mush it up. Because, the only purpose I can see with cut bananas is to put on a bit of bread, make a banana toast, throw some sugar on it and eat it. That's going to be beautifully tasting. And there's nothing better than just mushing it up with a fork to do that.
A banana toast? Seriously?
Yeah. You got to try it. I mean, if you haven't done that, you haven't lived. So
I said I don't spend a lot of time in kitchens, right? But in my kitchen, I can assure you, I've never ever made a banana toast.
So Nico, again, back down to the points. Katie, if you're going to slice it like this, you might as well just put a whole banana in an air fryer and see what happens. Wow. Richard, I rip my bananas in half. I'm macho.
Exactly.
And me is like, who needs to slice it delicately when all you're going to do is attack it with a fork?
Do I need to get points on this?
Yes. And we lost Ian. I think he's so you can give him all the points you like. We won't count.
I get connectivity issues. It's a shame, but
yeah. This is a difficult because it sounds like tie here. Like it's very tight. Because before I give the points, I'm going to ask one question. Kate, do you want this to stay or to go? I know what you say.
Go. Leave.
Okay.
Leave.
What about you, Richard? You want to keep it?
There you go, Kate. It's gone.
Much as I love the idea of looking frantically for my banana slicer in an emergency situation in the kitchen, it has to be go. My drawers are full of stuff that is marginally more useful than the slicer, I think. So go.
David.
I think I need something to remind me every day at just how futile life can be. So I will have it stay and I'll hang it up on a wall so that each morning when I go and get coffee, I can look at it and think, I have to go back to bed.
Okay, I'm not going to give the points because of I'm looking at environmental as well, like whatever. But on the joke side as well, laughing and stuff. I think that's why we're here, Laughing Sustainable. This is kind of a comedy jokes and show. So we're not giving points because someone said something special. Just that's
the whole point.
I changed my mind. Okay.
You did say he was God. It's just changed.
You can do whatever you want, Nico.
Okay, now I think the winner, the person who's going to get 50% is Kat. Because you talk about children as well. This is, it's accommodating the points.
Whole banana in the air fryer.
Yeah, and
in fact, the air fryer goes too. I think, if I remember what you say.
I don't know because David and Richard, you got almost very similar sense of humor. so maybe we'll break.
No sense of humor.
I'll break it. I'll break it in half. So I'll give you like 25 each.
25 each. We'll take 25. We're happy with 25.
Yeah, because Richard, you brought the item.
And what do you give for Ian?
Oh, Ian is still here.
No. But you heard what he said in your
I'll
just keep the 15 comes to him. You keep banking the 15.
This is a bit harsh on Ian, who's struggling with connectivity as well.
Yeah, I mean he's got to get an extra point for connectivity. No, would you?
Yeah, I said maybe we'll give him 20.
Yeah,
for
Give
his
him another
network.
20, and then give him the 15. So I'm giving him that. So I don't
We're
believe
gonna,
it.
after the show, guys, we're gonna have a meeting about the points thing.
Ooh, raising a head there, Katie.
I think the point scoring system is working really well.
Not even the host knows how it's working. But it works well,
Okay.
apparently. Okay.
Actually, I wanted to answer the question David asked me in the beginning. Nico, why did you travel all the way to Scotland? Because I always see the snow. I was like, so frustrated about this thing. I was like, I need to, before I die, that was my goal.
And
I
now that you're there, you find, with the warming climate and everything else, there's no snow in Scotland anymore. You could have just stayed.
No, I came in 2000. That was the last one, I think. No, I mean the bigger one.
I mean,
So I was staying on top of the snow, calling everyone in my village until my credit ran out. Like, yeah, I'm on the snow.
really?
I don't like it.
Richard, of course, grew up in a place. I don't know about your experience of snow, Katie, but Richard grew up in a place where it would be minus 17 degrees, and he'd be at
It's good for you, it's Nico here. Today I'm gonna be here. I'm here in Glasgow, and you can tell behind me, lots of snow. So I'm walking to my house now. It's gonna take him around maybe 7 minutes. Let's say 10 minutes. I'm gonna walk down. This is the forest. I'm gonna walk through there. That's the forest behind my house. But now I'm in the middle of in a way, motorway, and I'm going that way, which means it's gonna be fun. This is the forest I'm gonna enter now. I'm freezing now, so I'm gonna switch the camera to the other side. To be honest with you, walking is good for you, so let's see if I can do that. If it's not, we can keep on going about that, because I don't see how to change it. But you see how much snow. Wow. It's so cold. It's like freezing. I'm sorry to say this, I'm on the white world, you know what I mean? But that's the truth. Like proper snow, mate. It's like cold and beautiful. Nature is nice. In Dubai's COP28, you guys are chilling in the sunshine, free diesel, whatever you use. But here, we're talking about nature. So I'm gonna go through the forest now. Let me see if I can switch the camera to another side of it. I don't know how to do that, but it's gonna happen. Anyway, let's keep going. If I have to change, I'll change it. But yeah, I'm walking out through. I'm gonna go through the forest, and it's gonna be lovely. But honestly, I don't lie to you. It's so cold. It's freezing. It's like freezing. Okay, I'm gonna stop the video. So I'm gonna jump up to another video. So let's see if I can turn it around, which means it doesn't allow me, but I'm gonna keep holding it until I see if I can do it.
There you go, Nico. So
I was
you
shocked.
came to see snow and you saw snow. And
that was good. That's good. I was like, is my laptop playing games? What's going on?
And we came along in a very, very sudden coast spell, right? Just to demonstrate that the climate is playing silly buggers with us.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So
I like
how cold does it actually get in Glasgow? Because I've never been that far north in the UK. I've lived 27 years here, but I've actually never been really north of Heathrow. So
it's not that bad. I think it can be. Yesterday, I think was -1, 2.
okay.
I'm not 100% because I didn't check it properly. But when it's snowing, it's not cold. It's only like after the snow is settled, and then you got this cold weather coming in. Like my hands was like really in the morning. It was like that when I make that video. Yeah, it was cold. I think it was around.
No, because I think if you look at the map, kind of Scotland is on par with southern Sweden. So I know it's slightly different climate, but both of them have a lot of water around. So I would expect it to be like.
You've got the sweet in Sweden. I mean, that changes the temperature hugely.
think,
The people in Scotland, they're out
Finland.
every night having a drink. Sweden, you can't afford to have a drink.
I have coffee instead.
that gave me that joke, man. Scotland, if you don't drink, it's like religion here.
Yeah, exactly. Worship
that-
the altar of the bar.
It's probably just mythology, The Scottish people I know, they don't drink that much, not more than others. But
The Swedish people.
Those are posh ones. There's a difference between the rich and the poor.
Yeah,
it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Nico. It's a great pleasure having you, and we want to thank you again for hosting our show, which you did brilliantly. And we expected nothing else. There was a reason we picked you, obviously.
We'll be playing that every night. Who tipped over the tipping point at 7 o'clock when we start? We have a segment each time about all the products that we wish never were made. And but moving on, Richard. So
Yes.
this is going to be a serious, more serious bent into where we are. I believe that we're going to be talking about some of the economics things that we have. Do you want to introduce what this is and what we will be doing?
Yeah, very happy to. Basically, The Unsustainable Truth was not only the name of the book we released more or less exactly 2 years ago. It's also an event that's going to be running during these 12 days of the antidote to COP. Here we have it. Where David...
Get a copy if you're still looking for a Christmas present for someone. It's a great present.
It is a great present. It's a fantastic read. It highlights, I think, all the issues that are actually being debated at COP and other places. And here at the Antidote, we're going to be delivering the event, The Unsustainable Truth, where David and I, and sometimes others, we debate what the unsustainable truth is and various segments, what we think makes up the unsustainable truth of where we're heading and what we're doing. And this was recorded just a couple of days ago. And that very morning started with David putting a poll out on LinkedIn, actually, where he asked, do you find the current investment climate hard? And we disagreed profoundly, because I said I find it the hardest I've ever seen in almost 35 years in the market. I think this is the toughest I've seen. And David said, no, I think people find it easy. Everyone still believes that markets are going up and every sell-off is a buying opportunity. It turned out that 84% of you agreed with me, strangely enough, that the current investment climate is hard. And we decided to record a clip where we debate those things and why people find it hard or might not find it hard. And here is the first part of that very clip. The current investment climate on the unsustainable truth. Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is the Unsustainable Truth, where today we're going to be debating why the current investment climate is so tough. At least that seems to be what people think. David posted a question on LinkedIn, which asked, do you find the current investment climate tough? And an overwhelming 84% answered yes to that question. So why do we find the current climate so difficult to navigate?
There's a side, and they're both two different sides of climate change, basically. If you look at the world today, there's no reason why the investment climate should be tough. Governments are being as accommodative as they can possibly do in the face of what's going on. We've had the situations as we come out of kind of COVID, and those have really been over as far as everything settling down would normally be. So if you think yourself back 5 years to before the COVID time, back into 2015, 2016, then you imagine the world as it was then. The only thing that's kind of connected with that time, which is really coming into play even more and is going to do so with every year, is that it's the reason why Trump, when he first came in, and this is relevant because Trump's coming back into the election next year, when he first came in, gave markets such a boost. prior to that, it was a situation where we've had a decade long of stimulus, and essentially we were feeling the capacity constraints of our economy. The production capacity we're reaching its limit in that way. There were a lot of innovations along that time too. So the whole kind of disruptive innovations that were going on, and they are essentially what the ChatGPT and those kind of things are providing for us today. So the difference then as to the sense then, which was not that investment climate was tough, and Trump was largely elected on the basis that he was going to free up all the regulations, give everything a boost. Against that kind of capacity that we might have been feeling, we were limited. And you fast forward to today and you take a look, and well, the physical reality about the capacity being constrained is obviously not going to change because we're still on the same planet. I mean, some might have wished that they'd gone over to Elon Musk's ambitions of flying over to Mars, but that hasn't yet happened. And we can talk about his rocket another time, which is quite interesting, quite a good achievement in some ways. But if you go to the other side then of saying, okay, what are those capacity limits that was felt then, and how are they exhibiting themselves now? I'd like to say a few things I would definitely put out of the question in that way, and a few things that I'll put definitely into the question. You know, the war between Russia and Ukraine, I'll take that out of the question. I don't think that's relevant to why investment climate is poor. There's a lot of shenanigans and a lot of traders kind of, you know, trying to profit and boosting up prices and increasing volatility and those sort of things. But you can largely look through those. In terms of the constraint on food and on energy and those kind of things, you know, they contribute, but on the margin, they've been, you know, kind of other people have provided capacity. As for Russian gas and oil, they've sold just as much as before, essentially. The price is slightly different, better in some respect. So those are not really the reason there. What is very much the situation is that the kind of disruptions you and I have been talking about from the climate is definitely relevant today.
Yeah.
So this month, November, we've seen the passage through Panama Canal is increasingly becoming an issue. And that's because of the oil there. If you think about the quantum mine in Panama, also the copper mine there, and its difficulty with actually carrying on, and the possibility it may completely close due to the conflicts between people and our need for materials for the net zero transition. That's the other side of that. So that expresses both sides of why the investment climate is so difficult at the moment. On the one side, you've got genuine physical reality biting you. And on the other side, you've got this insane, what do you call it when animals go stampede? This insane stampede to try and get ahead of it by exhausting our capacity even further. And that's not just our capacity in our physical materials, it's also our capacity for our climate to cope with the additional oil and gas and coal that we keep pumping out in terms of burning and so on. So we're just making everything worse. The result, when you put all that together, is the offshore contracts, they have to be cancelled. The idea that somehow if you invest in renewable energy, you get paid, you actually get hurt, because if you invested in a energy supplier, governments come in and cap your profits because they don't want the consumers to pay for that. If you invested in a manufacturing industry or a startup into that area, you get hurt because the inflation in prices, because everybody's pushing for the same thing. And as for everyday living and our spare living, I mean, you know, the other day I went for lunch with a friend in London. Two of us, ordinary restaurant, nothing fancy, 90 quid, right? 90 quid Thai, you know, had both noodles. He had both noodles. We had a salad between us and one beer. I mean, come on, 90 quid.
Yeah, that's cost of living crisis, mate.
But that's also part of our climate. That's also what's going on. And what it has done is, in the light of this, what companies have done is they have tried to go along and say, I'm going to increase my prices, so I'm going to focus on the things that I can increase my prices for. So they want to think about the premium brands. All of a sudden, everybody's becoming a premium brand expert, right?
Yes, because there you have fatter margins and you have more ability to extract the extra return on equity. So yeah.
Except there isn't. It's like the comment you made before when we were reading about Volkswagen at the beginning of the year, when they said they were going to be a premium brand. What was it you said?
And Volkswagen will never be a premium brand. They might even own Bugatti. I think they own Bugatti, but they're not the premium brand. Volkswagen is a really well-made car for everyday people that has, a bit higher reliability than the guys that make cars in the Mediterranean. But no one buying a Volkswagen will ever pretend, that they bought a BMW.
Well,
or an Audi.
That's the problem, because companies see themselves not as what their customers see them. They see themselves as what they think they should be. We've had this long period where basically any idea would have gotten supported in one form or another. And you could think yourself as being supermodel, and I'd like to think of that myself too, but I know I'm not going to be one. That's not the case it's going to be with the companies. So let me flip the question around. I mean, it's going to be a difficult environment. Trump this time coming in, I think it's going to be extremely bearish for the markets. I think that in the face of the disruptions between China and the US, the slight warming that Biden and Xi Jinping have had over the past weeks, as we had in the COP, that nod and handshake kind of acknowledging each other again. If Trump comes in, that will all go, and then you have a real issue. And I think this time around, people don't have the same view as they did about Trump the first time around. But what would you do?
I agree with you. I think what you're touching on there is that US is now 8 years further forward than when Trump got elected. When he got elected the first time, and what actually boosted the market was a gigantic tax cut that added even more fuel to an already steamrolling economy. I think we're coming increasingly to the realization that the fiscal potential for most nations to continue to stimulate is very quickly evaporating. US is running $33 trillion of debt at the federal level. Rates have gone up quite a lot. The debt servicing cost on that amount of debt has probably gone up by close to $1 trillion a year. That is going to impede any possibility you have to go with wholesale tax cuts, which was essentially what Trump did back then. And then you add to that the very hostile rhetoric that he's prepared to engage with, not only to China, but even to closer neighbors like Mexico with its wall, etc. It's not the guy who's building bridges, and now he's not going to have the fiscal maneuverability that he had 8 years ago if he gets elected. So I don't see a very bullish response to Trump being elected. So in that sense, I fully agree with you. The question is, if he doesn't run or if he doesn't get elected, will we then get a relief rally that he is not the guy that's going to run the most important economy in the world for the next 4 years?
So tell me, what would you suggest? By the way, just before that, I mean, just to say, this year, right? We started the year with California being flooded.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've had another set of storms around. We had a Pacific hurricane hitting it.
Yeah.
Remember that, which is unusual. We've had intense heat wave in the middle of America all through. We've had farmers worrying about will they make it, not make it, make it, not make it, make it, not make it, all the way through the period in America.
Yeah.
And what was I going to say? There's something about the last bit to sort of cap it along. And New York got shut down. New York City.
Forest fires in Canada. Yeah.
Well, there was that as well. And so Trump is going to have to build up an air wall in some ways, right? To tell the air not to come by. We'll breathe our own, okay, not your stuff. And then New York City subway got shut down with floods.
Yeah, along with it.
So all those things add on to that cost of running a business in America, as in fact running it anywhere in the world at the moment. But what would you then advise? I mean, where do you put your money?
Well,
obviously, it depends on who you are. So we had a conversation this morning with a good friend of ours who's in Asia, in Thailand, and they're thinking about what they should do. And we had a similar conversation. And they are kind of they're not financial people. They are hardworking couple. Kids in their late teens, going to university, saved up some money. What would you do? What do you reckon for that then? Let's take it bit by bit.
Yeah. Okay. The first thing I think to dissect is figure out where you want to live. It actually matters a lot from here on. The planet is not going to get hit equally. The further north you are and the further south you are, the little bit less extreme the weather will be in terms of the heat waves. You're still going to get hit. So that obviously matters. It matters particularly with regard to your property, because areas that are flood prone now will not be less flood prone tomorrow. And the same goes for erosion and all those things. But here, actually, the legal framework matters hugely, because one of my firmest beliefs is that as government become increasingly stressed for cash, because we are still, after all these years of very high growth, running enormous deficits. And not all of that was related to COVID and an emergency, mission to save the economy. We were running deficits all the way through the period you started out describing, coming out of the financial crisis in 2008. You would have thought that governments would at least have made an attempt to put their fiscal house in order. So all the people clamoring for help from government are not going to receive it, or they're not going to receive anywhere near what they think they might be able to receive if they get hit with misfortunes, because actually the cash is running out. There are limits to how much a government can spend on its citizens, no matter whether it's deserved or not. There's just a limit. So that matters. And when governments come under real pressure to raise revenue, they do crazy things. And that means your property might not be totally safe. And here we're talking about property in a larger context, not only your house. We know there are countries who have used taxation on capital in bank accounts to raise revenue. They can introduce property taxes all of a sudden. UK is debating a mansion tax if you live in a reasonably large house, etc. So where you find yourself physically living actually matters to what you can do and how you should see the future.
Yeah, but a lot of people aren't going to be able to move. You're kind of stuck where you are. If you have that choice where you can move, that's one thing, and we could address that later. But I think for the bulk of people, your home is where you're stuck. It's not, you like it to be where you hang your head, but it's kind of where you're stuck.
Yeah, of course there is for a lot of people, and for most of us that's the case. But it's worth thinking about, because very many of us have connections to more than one country. And, I might be an extreme case. I've lived in 3 different countries, 4 almost. So I have connections to at least 4 countries. I would probably not consider living in one of them because I have no connections left there. But it gives me a little bit a different viewpoint of where I look over the next decade, etc. But then you also have, how are you going to nurse your nest egg to protect you from these adverse events? Because whether you have a lot of savings or just a little bit of savings, you're still feeling the pressure to have that buffer available to you when adverse events happen. And how are you going to nurse that buffer so that it's actually there when you need it? And my basic view is...
What would you say you actually do? I mean, that's all very well saying these are things to worry about. I mean, people have plenty to worry about. What do you actually do? What would you suggest you actually do? I mean, you say move. Okay, fine, you can't move. And by the way, I kind of disagree about the fact that, you think safe places are safe places. I think the right way to think about it is nowhere is necessarily better off. There are all sorts of problems with that. You just can't tell. But that aside, what would you say? Investment environment is tough. I've gone on a bit about why, it shouldn't be, but there are 2 parts which makes it so, and they're both part of the climate devastations and our reactions to those climate devastations.
Yeah.
And here we are. Question everybody's sort of addressing: what do I do? What do I do with my pension? Let's start from those, and then we can go on to about, those who may have more, or even if I don't have a pension, a formal pension, but I just have, a little bit of money, a month's worth of money, a couple months worth, or maybe even, kind of much further than a year or a couple of years worth, or whatever it is, in some account somewhere. What do I do?
Not easy to respond, but I can only relate to what I'm doing myself and how I manage my capital. The first thing I think about is, what are the things that are going to be least badly affected if bad things really happen? It means that the stocks I own and the shares of these companies I own actually come from a very small pool of listed stocks. I tend to focus very much on the kind of companies that provide us with really genuinely needed goods and services that have quite boring business models.
Can you give some example, and rather than that, can you just get into the specifics of, and then maybe you can describe why that is the case, rather than describing why that is the case and leaving people thinking, okay, which one are you talking about?
Well, companies.
Nestle is a boring business.
Yeah, but you also need to have kind of a bit of cash flow coming out of it. So I think as spending gets pared back, if we believe that can happen, companies that provide goods and services that you can kind of do without on a daily basis, because it's nice to have them, but it's not essential, they will be at risk. The more volatile the economic environment becomes, the more people will be prepared to pare back on the things that they don't really need. Well,
it's really interesting you say that. Like my daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 12, right? And so we'd been there to see the Taylor Swift movie a few weeks before. And I was telling her about how Taylor Swift in Brazil was suffering because of the heat wave there, and they canceled concerts and stuff. And I thought, she'd be devastated along. And what she said was, well, we can't live without Taylor Swift. And so you're saying that's a brand that, if my 12-year-old can recognize that she can live without Taylor Swift, that's not a brand to buy into, and things like that, right?
Yeah, kind of, right? Entertainment's going to be at risk as a sector, I think, because it's something we're prepared to spend a lot of money on because it's really nice. I love going to concerts. I like going to the movies. I like going out eating in restaurants, etc. But
90 quid for lunch for two people.
90 quid at the lunch, is like, okay. Then you start thinking, there are things I definitely will not be without until I'm absolutely forced to, and that's things like eating and heating my home, etc. I probably cannot do without a car. I cannot do without some clothes, but I can change my pattern of which clothes I buy, etc. And the same for shoes and all these things. So all of a sudden, things that are at risk are, paradoxically, the premium brands that extract a sort of extra layer over cost for what it entails wearing it, what it entails drinking it, etc. In a world where people come under real pressure to look at the money in their pocket, I actually think a lot of those business models will struggle.
So have a look at this, right? So Netflix share price, okay?
Yeah.
So what we've got here, and you think about where we are now, right? So November 22nd, $478. And we go back to the dip in March as we were in COVID, right? When the markets tanked, and that's 33. But just before that, before the world took COVID seriously, okay, which is in February, that's 380. Before that, at the beginning of the year when COVID was kind of bringing out, 347. So call it whichever, like 345 or whatever, going to 470, 120 points on 340, which is almost 30%.
Yeah.
The interest rates have gone up a lot since then.
Yeah.
And it has, where's the extra value? I mean, aside from that crazy volatility and that dip back down when everybody who subscribed then basically unsubscribed, as you were saying, because we can live without it. And it goes on through trying to do this. And honestly, I mean, the Netflix content I watch today is a lot less interesting than what it was then.
Yes, because you have many more streamers offering their services, and they're pulling content from an independent streamer, if you like Netflix, and going back to the content library. Disney, Warner Brothers, and Paramount, etc. are pushing their own content.
This price action goes. So where is this extra 30%? Coming from between before the COVID, where we were, going up to there. Where is that extra value coming from? Or if you go back to what we said about Trump, back in June sort of thing, or November, at the time when Trump was elected, going on, that was like $100, best part $100. That's like 4 times, almost 5 times that value.
Yeah.
So on to what you're thinking, a bad, difficult environment to invest in, because you look at price like that and you think, how much has been priced in already? What's fundamentally different about this business that makes it that much more? I don't know if there's anything that's fundamentally different about it, other than that people who have subscribed and desubscribed or unsubscribed, or whatever that term is.
Yeah, so there was a lot of account sharing in there that people got worried about, etc., and they clamped down on that.
That was that dip earlier in the year, but it's risen considerable amount. And what you were saying earlier about entertainment and those stuff, but it's not priced like that, right?
It's not, but perhaps, and here I'm just being speculative because I haven't dissected the whole sector. If you have 10 streamers out there or 5 streamers out there, and they're all offering their services, which are very, very similar, and we know not everyone will pull back on on entertainment. Then you look at the content and you're saying, well, if I'm still going to be spending money, I might not pay for 2 or 3 streamers. I'm just going to pay for 1. Then maybe, the strongest in that group goes on and actually captures much more of the market share, and in that case becomes a dominant player with more pricing power, etc. But it's hard for me to look at all the streamers and the value of them all in the streaming business and say, this is something I want to buy into as a sector or as a part of a sector in entertainment when I think times are going to be tough. I haven't looked at the individual companies in detail, but I think on aggregate, they are probably pricing in a too rosy future as an industry in a world where their consumers and their clients are going to really be looking much harder at how they spend their money. Maybe Netflix emerges as the great winner out of that group. And I actually honestly think the market is kind of pricing it that way, that they will be the last one standing, and with more pricing power, maybe that price is justifiable or even cheap. But I think you have a lot of risks, because not only do you have big competitors in the space with a lot of financial muscle that could take them on and say, we're going to take this fight.
Well, maybe what you think.
I'm just not sure that if I'm going to buy 20 stocks and have as a base for how I use my savings, that I would buy anyone in the entertainment space. So there we are. That was quite a heavy debate.
I mean, it was, and unfortunately about the the video, it looked like I was filmed behind some kind of a mask, like one of these things when you don't want to be identified when they're talking to you.
No, I don't think so at all.
But I mean, coming back to today, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how do you see our world today? In terms of where we have seen it from that time. Are we in a world where, if anything, we've gone up further since the time when we recorded? If you take, for example, someone like Netflix, we definitely, in some sense, economically, in the sense, of thinking, I don't know, are we back to the days of there is no alternative? Is that what it is about? Is all of our investing falling into this sort of shape of saying that we just we've met CEOs of investment companies who have said, investment managers who have said, you've got to be fully loaded all the time. You simply have to be fully loaded all the time.
Yeah, which I honestly think is a pretty crazy idea, because it assumes that the investment opportunity is equal over time, and it's not. Otherwise, hedge funds wouldn't exist. So I still think that there are times you want to be long the market, there are times you want to be a little bit long the market, and there are times you don't want to be in the market at all. And it helps, obviously, having had a career in financial markets, deciding what to do in those situations. But I think it's genuinely super tough climate, despite markets, having recovered a fair bit. I'd also like to say that even if markets have recovered, those prices are not really telling the full story. Because 2022 was a horrific year. Global stock index was down like 20%. Global bond index was down more than 10%. So the traditional 60-40 portfolio was down something like 16-17%. This year we've seen a recovery, not a full recovery, but it's coming close to a full recovery in nominal terms. And this is important to bear in mind. These are 2 years when inflation has been running on average like 7-8%. So even if you say, I'm down 17-18 and I'm up 16%, I'm only down like 1% nominal over 2 years, you've probably shipped another 15% in inflation. So you're still down 16% or something like that. Now, I'm just roughly taking the numbers here because I haven't checked. But this performance is happening in the world where cost of living is a serious concern and inflation is running very high. So I do think it's a tough environment that has taken its toll on people. I think it will continue to take its toll on people. I'm really happy sort of not being very exposed to the long side, apart from a really small pool of companies that are in the business of doing stuff that I know everyone will keep on needing for a long time going forward. I am still perplexed over the amount of people who don't see the risks going forward here. And I think the risks are actually...
Well, there is this, there is this thing called the Minsky moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the point when a market that kind of thinks everything is going on okay and continues to buy into it reaches that point where it completely implodes. And in the original kind of thesis of the Minsky moment is all about debt. And it's this aspect by which we borrow and we carry on through. And today, Ray Dalio had this piece about how the US is now borrowing to pay interest on its debt.
Yeah.
Now, that's typically the tipping points to the Minsky moment.
Yeah.
But what we've been talking about is a climate-related Minsky moment, that we borrow on the climate through the oil and gas and coal that we use. And we have made absolutely no attempt at reducing the amount of oil and gas and coal we produce. Every year, we increase the production. We've given plenty of lip service about how we cut emissions, but like who was it who made that comment about the fact that it's Mark Cabanane, it's like sort of trying to do away with the effects of smoking without actually cutting out the cigarettes.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing. So we're borrowing constantly. Every point we talk about renewable energies, we pump more oil out. Every time we talk about regenerative agriculture, we pump more gas out. Every time we talk about kind of like green hydrogen or whatever, we go and burn more coal.
Yeah.
So we keep borrowing from that climate future. And the Nico, as he showed us earlier today with the snow there in Glasgow, but Cumbria fell to -12 degrees.
Yeah.
Overnight, its temperatures drop to minus 12 degrees, which is a huge range. Last year, Cheyenne Airport in Wyoming, the temperature dropped from +5 to minus 15 degrees in centigrade over 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Right. And those are all signs of how we're hitting that sort of, Minsky moment in the consequence of our physical world, and they translate into our economics. But the point about the Minsky moment is you never notice it. You
Until
never
it's too
believe
late.
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Because
Of
the
course.
instability is actually on the upside. While you keep borrowing, you feel great because some guy is just lending you money all along. And then the loan shark comes along with a baseball bat. And then you find out, actually, you know what? That was the last dollar I could borrow. But of course, that was yesterday.
Yeah. No, it's the way it works. And
let's bring Nico and see what he says. Hey,
Yeah.
Nico.
Here he is. Let's unmute him. He's here, and we're very thankful that Nico is with us today. So,
Nico? I think he's not aware of us.
no, now he's in here.
Yeah. So
Indeed.
as Glasgow, which is kind of like the barometer of the real world, with real people, kind of like, as you say, going out drinking at night and all the rest of it. How would you describe it in terms of, in a deep depression to like partying without a care tomorrow? Where is it now?
Well, it's very difficult to measure. Like people are celebrating, it's like Christmas season already as well. So there's in Glasgow, there's a big Christmas market.
Right.
So it's good for families and people, celebration and stuff.
Is it affordable?
No, not at all. It's like
you need to take out a bank loan, right, before you can go there.
Well, you can go to those West places that I'm not comfortable to be around, but because the price is good,
okay.
you can.
I mean, London had a winter Wonderland fair. It was 20 quid a ride.
What?
Quid.
I mean,
20
quid for a ride for a couple of minutes, being spun around on some roller coaster, whatever spinning thingy.
Yeah, paying money to feel sick. Yeah, that's great value.
Yeah, but it's not so much paying money to feel sick. I mean, that can be quite fun, but it's 20 quid a ride, right? And so this is that Minsky moment thing. You're very willing to pay for it because you can borrow it from somewhere, and our economy is borrowing from the climate. I mean, Panama Canal is dried up, basically, it's effectively shut. And there's huge implications on the Suez because people are now changing their routes.
Yeah. While we have Nico on board here, we're appreciative because it's Sunday night and he's taken time here to log on from Scotland and once again explain his scoring system as I complained to him in the quiz show that I wasn't given enough points. But Nico, you have great insight, right? You grew up in Zimbabwe. You came to Glasgow like 20 years ago.
I was in London before, so I was in Glasgow since 2010.
2010. Okay, so 10 years London, 10 years and a bit in Glasgow. When you're up there in Scotland, do you have a sense that people are feeling any crisis? That there is a cost of living crisis, that money is very tight, that, the climate is doing bad things to me, that all of a sudden costs me money, the riverbanks are flowing over, you get roof leaks because there's too much water coming down, and, mudslides keeping you from getting around. Do you get that sense in Scotland?
Oh, yes, definitely, because the one thing I never had in my life was called a food bank. I thought the bank was for money, So when I heard about food bank, I was shocked. What I mean? So it is it's laughable, but like as a person from Africa, that word food bank is something very strange in the rich country, So
and of course the UK. I mean, what's the proportion of people who uses food banks?
It's larger than it's ever been. That
Right.
I know because I saw it, some statistics of it not long ago, only like a week ago. And the number was really, really huge of people using food banks. And on one level, you have to eat, right? It's a basic need, and it's great that they exist, and they do an unbelievable amount of good for people. And in many cases, they're also ensuring that we're eating products that might otherwise have been discarded because they're about to run out of date, which I think part of the idea is that you're going to use all these products. So that's great. But it must be really sending alarm bells ringing when you have a constantly increasing proportion of people who feel I need to go to a food bank to actually get the meal because I can't afford to go and buy the food.
The other thing, sorry, Richard, like for me, I think the food bank started. I thought it was for refugees, for example. When it started, I studied it. I thought this is for refugees, asylum seekers. Then it turns up to the communities, and everybody now is no longer. I think I've seen a sense of embarrassment when people go to food banks, but now it become maybe it's okay. Now it's a reality, so you can't really be embarrassed about it.
No,
so
the
which is a good
stigma
thing.
has gone.
I mean, I think our comment is maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it does matter. Do people see my sense is people don't see any of these things as essentially related with the climate, essentially as a climate challenge. They tend to think of this as government incompetence. They tend to think of this as kind of political interference from other parts of the world or whatever it might be. But the last thing they think of as being the cause of the cost of living crisis and the driver to the challenges we see on our daily lives is climate. What do you think? I mean, you have your comedy nights up in Glasgow, you have those sort of things, and comedy is often a very good barometer of what people are thinking about.
I'll start by laughing because yesterday I was talking to one of my friends from Zimbabwe about climate change. He's like, do you believe that? I was like, oh yeah. I said, let's look at climate change as your body. The planet is also allowed to get old, because if you don't take care of it, it's getting old. So there is a sense of like in when I say in the African communities that there's a denial about talking about climate change, because maybe, I don't know. For me, I was committed to this for since before COP26, and I read some books. I'm trying to, educate myself more. And I'm from the village, so I've seen lots of changes and stuff like that. And we can see it here in Europe as well. Like, it's no longer like when I came in 2000, the snow was like really heavy and stuff. Maybe in Glasgow didn't have much snow last year and last of last year. So there's a changes. Sometimes you can see the River Clyde in Glasgow a little bit, low, like very empty on the other side. But those things, I think they should be allowed to happen as a season, but not too much, like what's going on. For me, I would think we need more resources to actually go to these communities and start raising awareness or education maybe on the climate change. That's the government as well should be helping out.
What about kind of amongst the non-African people in Glasgow, and sort of the rest of the population and so on? Is Glasgow, by the way, is a fantastic city, right? I mean, I've been there a couple of times and it's amazing. It grew up during the 17th, 18th century. It was basically the major city in Europe at the time. It was a port, which people don't really realize, and it had such a large influx of population into the city because it was booming so much. It created this necropolis, this city for the dead, right in the middle of the city along with it, and it's an impressive kind of place that you can go and visit.
Yeah, there's a lot of history about Glasgow. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
think
Well,
we struggled
I think
a bit for connection there.
I think internet is adding his voice to that.
Yeah.
What do you
he's
want to
back,
do? Do
he's
you want to
back, he's
carry
back.
on to the next part?
No, I think
No.
I think we should use the opportunity just a little bit longer with Nico, because he's got great insight, right? African
Yeah, so,
insight,
yeah,
Glasgow insight, which is not London insight, we might add.
No.
And
I was going to answer David's question about African communities in Glasgow. Yes, there's a lot, because this is where the UK government send asylum seekers and refugees, because it's cheap accommodation for the government to accommodate asylum seekers and refugees. So become like people settle down here once they get all their papers sorted out.
It's kind of like an internal Rwanda. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, yes, I just see that now. But before that one, I think I didn't know. But now, yeah, you're right. If you look back for it, but this one maybe we can call it the more peaceful one. And second, once you're in Scotland, there's so many opportunities as well. Like education is free in Scotland, universities, and it's a beautiful country. People are friendly in Glasgow. Even Edinburgh, a little bit different, but because that's how I was saying earlier on, the world is divided by the more money you have, the more attitude you got. So I don't know. It's kind of like, so it's a different. I don't know if it's climate change or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Could well be, but
well, I'm not sure everything can be climate change. Even I won't go that far.
Look, I've seen Braveheart. Scottish people are not peaceful. Let us dispel that myth once and for all.
I'm sorry, Mel Gibson is not actually Scottish.
Really?
No, it's Australian. Yeah.
Fair enough. But no, I think it's telling, that people are feeling the pinch wherever you are in the world, and we're hearing stories, from all continents, how some people might call it the cost of living crisis, but I actually just tend to think of it that life is getting harder. That's really what it is. Life's getting harder. And I think all these things are interconnected, with the climate. But one thing we touched upon, and David's a big proponent of, and I agree, is that, we're borrowing from the future by doing too much. But we're also borrowing
from the climate. We're borrowing from the climate, is my point. We're actually borrowing from the fact that I go out today and, it's cold, but it's not horribly cold. And we're borrowing from that.
Yeah.
We're borrowing from the fact that over the summer, it's hot. I mean, back to Taylor Swift in Brazil during her concert. Her concert, you can see she was having problem breathing. You had that comment about the fans dying and in there.
Yeah.
But even there, they were trying to keep the concert going. We're borrowing from the fact that we can still breathe to carry on doing that.
Yeah,
and we always do that.
I wanted to ask, do you think the movement of people as well, like refugees, because the world is moving up a lot around, is a cause of climate change in some cases? Because I don't know, I'm not an expert on this, but I can imagine that back where I'm from in Zimbabwe, in the villages, when the rain is good, we never rely on the government. We crop our crops and we feed ourselves, and even our animals are very healthy that time, and everything, there's water, was on time. So, like, if you look at now, there's been a really biggest droughts and in some regions. That if a villager can't get that food we used to get, he has to move to a big city to find a job. In that big city, there's no job in the same country. Now you move to another big city, there's no job. You move, you keep moving and instead of that.
But I think it's not. I think climate change is kind of like an amplifier in many ways. It's like you have a hand, you got a cut on your finger or something, right? And it's a bad cut. And then what you find is you're dropping things all over. You can't really do things, and it hurts you all the time, and so on. And that's what climate change at this level is doing. It's just making everything that little bit more difficult. And you're driving along, and you think you can still drive. And what happens is your finger gets caught in the steering wheel, and you don't quite move things sufficiently well, and you get a ding in your car, and that kind of things just happens along. So climate change is not, it's not that climate change itself creates all the devastations. It's that it compounds all the little nicks that we get all the time in a way that stops us from being able to respond sufficiently to it. So what happens is we get hit a lot more, we get bruised a lot more, and it ultimately, every time, it costs us. It costs money in our pockets.
Yeah.
And people don't see that because they see the thing in the car, they think it's the other driver, they think whatever it is. They see the insurance going up, they don't see the insurance for their car going up. Is because, you know, so many cars just got washed off the roads. And therefore, the insurance company had to pay out for those, and they're charging you a bigger premium as a result. So we never see those connections in that way. And so we kind of think that parties still going on is fine, we can get out there. And it's never severe enough at this kind of elevated temperature. I like to think of it as, you know, the warming at the moment, about, you know, 1.2 degrees. It's like having a temperature where you're 1.2 degrees over your normal temperature. So you're kind of like midway 37, 38, high 37 degrees kind of thing. You feel sick. You don't feel well. You're kind of wearing an extra layer and just shivering a little, whatever it is. But it affects your ability to concentrate. It affects your ability to work. And so it affects the ability for the whole planet to deliver the things that we're used to it delivering: food, water, you know, materials, all those sort of things. And and that's how it increases our costs at the moment. If it carries on through, what the scientist says is you get these catastrophic situations where the physical conditions get worse. But before that, the question is, are we just too exuberant? And, you know, I guess it's fairly clear where I am on that.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. I think people don't make the obvious connection to the climate when they see their insurance going up, and they see the food prices going up, and they see the heating of their homes go up. And it's not, I don't think you can prove that it's all the climate, but climate is certainly a major part of that story, because it's happening before our eyes. And perhaps, you know, it's not obvious to everyone to connect those dots, but we come from a certain point of view where we think it's very easy to connect those dots, or certainly easier than for others. But before we're going to let Nico go, because it's Sunday night for him and he's been great being here. He's our fearless leader. What can I say? He's our fearless leader of the quiz show. The last bit sort of, do you think there is rising awareness in Scotland about the climate issue? Or
I think, to be honest, not enough. There's so many groups here. There's so many groups also created to believe in climate change, but talk about, no, sorry, they're doing different things. You know, for me, I would like to see more Scottish government actually go into these communities, like what I was talking about earlier on, and put the resources for people to start paying attention on that. I was talking to Engamed during the COP26. We tried to make some like a workshop. There's this beautiful African restaurant in Glasgow. It's massive. Like a weekend, you can have like 200 people there, easy.
Wow.
They always go there for food, drinking, dancing, you know. So I thought it was a very good space to actually start working on that. But because we don't have resources to do that, everything, as you said, it costs money to set up anything. Yeah, I think it's needed. To be honest, it's not enough. People are away, but I mean, like, some communities are not. Because I'm not trying to actually divide communities. You got Muslim communities, for example. I think I'm allowed to say that. Then you got African communities as well, and different communities. You got Scots communities and stuff. That they're all, these people, they all network, of course, but not with climate change issues. They don't. I don't think people connect that way. That connection is needed. For me, it's easy to see climate change is a problem in Glasgow, for example. The roads, you know, you can't cycle. Some roads are just split. What's called? I don't know. The ground just keep cracking and come up and stuff like that.
Giving way. Yeah,
exactly. So it's very bad. The roads and stuff like that. Maybe I don't know. I'm not an expert. I can know that. But you can blame the chemicals they use to patch the roads and stuff like that. But the point I'm going to make is just we need more resources on this, and second, we need more awareness like in the communities, like especially like right now. You know what I mean? Like I've seen the news about COP28 on the TV, but it's not really like going to the point where I'm looking to hear like something make me stand up and watch. To watch something like, oh, I missed that one. I want to watch this. But this one, it just passed by. Like, oh yeah, we heard about COP28. Then what? You know? Yes, it's a shame that there's not enough voices. But me, I'm glad to be here to be part of this game show and as well hosting this event. So I'll keep talking. I think what we are doing now is very, very nice and special that people are listening. They can also share it with other people.
Exactly. When we can only say thank you again to Nico up in Scotland. He is a very funny guy. He's not always this serious, as you know from watching the first clips. But he brings a different perspective because of his background, and I think that's important. So thank you so much for being with us here tonight, Nico. Look forward to seeing you host us again tomorrow.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And
so,
thank
Richard,
you, Nico.
Yep.
And I thought now would be a good time to move on and see the second part of how we come to terms with Netflix and other valuations before we have another little bit of a chat of what we think that means for the investment climate, perhaps going forward further from here. So first of all,
we can actually chat over our clip itself. That might be an adventurous thing to try.
Yeah, I think it might be too adventurous for us. We might try that tomorrow night, actually, playing a clip and then talking over it. We're going to kick off here with the second part.
You can always just pause it as we go.
We can do that too. We'll see how we get along. This is the second part of the Unsustainable Truth and why the investment climate is so tough at the moment.
Maybe what you're saying is actually a little bit different. I mean, I think what you're saying is that the market always price situations as winner takes all, except they price everybody to be a winner. That's basically what always happens, right? Remember back in the early days of the .com, and you stick a .com in your name and you're now worth, $500 million. It was, and in the same way, you take a lot of streaming and entertainment, the games, Netflix introduced games, market prices basically all of them to be the winner in a winner takes all world. Yeah, and I think that's the risk that we face. I think that's the risk that makes the investment world very difficult, because essentially always overprices everything. The only time when it doesn't is when you have a calamitous collapse.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when I like typically buying, but I tend to buy really boring stuff in those moments, things that don't bounce up as much. But I sleep well at night.
So what do you do with your money now that you can't buy anything, and so you go along? Or you're a CEO of a company. What do you do with your money? Are you back down to that share buyback thing?
No, because I do think here what you really, really, really need if you're a company is buying, is ensuring you have buffers, because you can get hit with adverse events. So being too finely optimized and too highly tuned and being too much financially and operationally leveraged is actually not the baseline business model you want to be running in this kind of environment. So you hold bigger cash buffers than usual, because it also enables you, if the calamitous happens, to actually buy things cheaply if you have that buffer available. But you're looking at simplifying and making your operations and your balance sheet more robust and resilient, because tomorrow is more uncertain than tomorrow was 5 years ago or 10 years ago. So
doesn't that just mean that the really aggressive one is the one that's going to win in this world? Most people behave like that. You've got plenty of room for you to run forward if you every horse in the race is being careful that they don't pull an injury.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's entirely possible that you miss out on the biggest winner in the corporate world that goes on to do just that and be very successful. But for that winner, I'm sure you're going to have a multitude of failures. that actually attempted that journey.
I don't have your optimism. I think, well, no, I mean, the whole coming right back down to it, I honestly do think what's underlying this difficulty is the climate devastations. And if you actually believe in those climate devastations, which I do, and there are plenty of people which I don't, and in fact, I'll hold you as one of the ones who don't, simply because of the way you describe things, is that there can't be a winner because, every year is going to be worse. If you go charging ahead, that works in a world where, the race course in front of you looks like the race course behind. But actually what happens is the race course in front of you is a crevasse. It just suddenly disappeared and you'll be charging over the cliff and you won't even know it. And the whole thing and the whole point about this is that everybody thinks that tomorrow is going to be better than today. When the storm is cleared, the weather's going to be fine, the sun's going to shine, and we're going to make loads of money. That's exactly the description you have. You have it on the risk side in saying, you've got to be careful along, but for those charging ahead, they might do it. But the real question here is, how serious is this climate devastation? Do we care? Do we care enough that we have to change the way we navigate ourselves forward?
Absolutely.
No matter whether you are the aggressive person or otherwise. And nobody is serious.
I wouldn't say nobody, but we are clearly a minority when you look at how market behaves.
No, I'd say nobody does. I mean, nobody behaves like this. You look at the renewable energy firm, they are bidding for, the UK has just raised the auction prices base or something by 60% to be able to support the investments, right?
Yeah.
Every country is bidding up the investments along. New York kind of stopped it, and earlier in the year, or just a month ago, in terms of not negotiating contracts for the offshore wind and those sort of things. Correct. The reality is there is no money.
Yeah.
And yet, what you have, which is what the Argentinian president, Milei, has, new elected said,
the new guy.
First day, there is no money. Okay.
Yeah.
But what does the UK do? They're offering tax cuts. When the government has no money either.
Correct.
And they believe that sort of stimulus will make it okay because they don't believe that the climate devastations will mean we won't be able to make the money.
No, it's classic supply side economics. And you think that you're going to drive the economy to run faster and therefore I capture more of the revenue with the tax cut. That is what you're describing as tomorrow will look exactly the same as yesterday. I don't believe in any new threats on the horizon. Damn the torpedoes, full steam ahead, because I don't think they really exist. They're just a mirage or a myth. It's not the way I would run anything, I don't run my own risk that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so for your company in terms of what they're doing there, you wouldn't buy share buybacks. I'm not sure what you would do. I guess that's why it's a tough investment environment.
Yeah.
The obvious choices are gone.
Yeah.
And this goes back down to what we were talking this morning with our friend. You would want to be spending your money frugally.
Yeah.
To create livelihood. The best thing you can do with your money is to spend it, but to spend it frugally. So not the sort of the flashy splashes, and I call buybacks one of the flashy splashes in that way, but to spend it frugally. Kind of the way that your grandparents might have said, that's what you need to be doing in some sense. And you need to spend that. And what does that mean? Is spending it to build in a way that can ensure better your livelihoods. And that applies to companies as well. Right.
Of course it does. A company is just a kind of more complicated model of how an individual operates, really. It's not that different. But, you have...
Right.
Well, you have a different taxation and you have different structures, but whether you are an individual, a household, a company, or community, or even a country, at the end of the day, there are limits. You cannot continue to spend money you don't have, because eventually you run out of road.
So let's take this, and I was just looking at my screen because I've been really kind of grayed out, blurred because of the background light. But let's take this. So we have COP coming in a couple of weeks, in 2 weeks. We've been preparing for It's For You, which is our antidote program of the antidote to COP28. And in it, we are asking people to redirect their spending to those they think are making the world better. Okay? And we've been talking about how it's a bad investment environment, how you need to spend your money frugally. And so we have COP28. So the obvious kind of question along with that is, what does it mean to be spending your money to those making the world better? You know, whether you're a company or otherwise, we've seen ESG investments collapse. You know, one of the renewable energy firms collapse. Absolutely incredible. We've seen Siemens Gamesa, you know, the wind turbine manufacturer, becoming a complete basket case, right? And we've had all these problems with the solar panel manufacturing, with a trade war, basically a global trade war. At the time when we say we need to triple our solar capacity, the two biggest economies in the world are actually telling each other, not buying your stuff to do that, right? So,
which will drive up prices.
So what does, well, I don't know, I'm not sure what they will do, but what it probably will do is not allow sufficient solar capacity to be brought online, as we may want. But if you take along with that, and you go along and you invest and you say, okay, you know, spend my money, redirect your money to those making the world you think are making the world better. Who do you think is making the world better that you'd like to redirect your money to?
Well, I'll go back to kind of basics.
By the way, there's a guy down the road from us who just started a little farm, and so, you know, he gets my tomato money. So.
Well, there you are, right? You think about, again, genuinely needed goods and services, the things you cannot do without, that you need for your livelihood and your existence. You want to be able to buy those infinitely from a source you can trust at all times. And then you need to figure out who that source is, because they are actually making your life easier and better in that sense. You want to be able to rely on other people when things get tough. And that means, to some extent, you need to use much more local services and local shops, because they are going to be the people that are around you if things get really, really tough. If we run out of petrol in a blockade, you are not going to be able to drive, 10 miles to a supermarket and carry the stuff back home. You actually need someone local that can provide you with those goods. And you need to use them so that they are actually still in existence when that was
I get this vision as you talk to this of kind of like, the Downton Abbey sort of scenario, where you've got the grocers with the grocer's boy and the little in a bicycle with a little basket in front, kind of riding around delivering the packages. Is that what you think? Is that kind of,
No, not necessarily, but there is something aching to that.
Amazon Fresh count as being local.
Very, very possible. Amazon is a phenomenal company. They've adapted so many times during the last 2 decades to changing situations. Maybe they create local hubs that can provide those services, because I think it's going to be very, very hard in bad scenarios from here to actually having to solely rely on things coming from far away that get delivered to you, or you are able to go and buy those things, because you actually need to have the means available to do that. And then your local close environment actually becomes much, much more important to you. It's very, very hard to live in a community or live in a block of flats where you are the odd one out, which no one wants to interact with and have anything to do with. You actually need to get along with your neighbors. It's a pretty good start, If you don't get along with your neighbors, you have a problem.
You realize that the whole evolution of urbanization has been to get along without your neighbors, right?
Yeah,
this
but trust me, having lived, in a number of different properties over the years, your life is infinitely easier. Your life is infinitely less full of nasty surprises if you get along with your neighbors. You don't need to love them, but you need to kind of get along with them, okay? Otherwise, bad things can happen.
So what does that then go to in terms of, again, we're down into this thing about how COP is coming up, and what does that imply? Does it matter whatever happens in COP? Does it matter to your decisions, to your choices? Is that something that you say, pay attention to this or pay attention to that part of it?
Not really.
What are you doing? You watching it? You're not going to watch it?
I watch a few of the news flashes coming out, but in many, many ways, I'm totally prepared for what will come out of COP. You will have a number of governments with very different views on who should be doing what. And their basic view is always that someone else should be doing at least as much as they are doing or more, which doesn't work because people are at different levels of development. It's being hosted in the heartland of oil, and they obviously have an interest to keep oil flowing. And if you listen at a lot of the commentary coming out in the run-up to COP, it's more and more taking on the shape that we know we cannot really affect what others are doing in their energy usage. So it's better for us trying to find a way of dealing with their usage. And then we can call it carbon capture or whatever. But you're starting to lean more and more again towards really fancy technological solutions, to having to deal with the fact that we are not going to come up with anything that actually restrains the supply of fossil fuels. Oil, gas, and coal will keep on flowing freely.
We needed to run the heat pumps.
Yeah, you do. You need to build the heat pumps, And
no, to run them. I mean, to run them. Right?
Yeah, you need them to be run. And you're dealing with countries that come from very, very different geographical positions in terms of their ability to have various forms of renewable energy. You grew up in Scandinavia, you have a lot of renewables because actually you have rivers. If you don't have rivers, you're not really going to have much hydropower. It's just a fact that it's hard to get around, and even there you have issues with blocking off rivers, etc. But I think my main point here is that there is no way I see us coming out of COP28 having found the silver bullet that 190 nations in the world agrees on, and importantly, you get the 10 powerful nations in the world to agree to it. Because if the 10 powerful nations agree to it, then everyone else will follow. But the 10 most powerful nations in the world will not agree to something like that. I just don't see that happening. So you are going to kick the can down the road till next year. And then you're going to come back with the same questions, but with much more damage having been done through various forms of climate devastations.
So what are you saying? Does it matter? Does it not matter?
I think COP is close to irrelevant. It sounds
and you're
bizarre, but I
saying
think
the decisions of the governments don't matter to us. That's what you're saying. If it's irrelevant, you're saying the decisions don't matter to our lives.
In some respects, yes, but I would stretch it further than that. I would stretch it to say that governments cannot possibly take the decisions that would be needed to find a global solution to it, politically speaking. I don't see that happening.
I totally disagree. I think it absolutely matters to your life, to my life, and everyone's lives. But it's not going to go well for us. That's why it matters. I think the decisions and the indecisions, whichever way you want to think of it, because the indecisions is deliberate, as much as decisions are deliberate, will completely devastate us.
Yeah, you are more bearish than I am, but we are both very, very worried.
And being there and shouting at them or whatever it is won't have any effect. So it absolutely matters, but you're not going to be able to look after yourself by screaming at them. I think that's what it is. And the only way to navigate through climate change, you have to pay attention to what the decisions or indecisions are, because they will determine the path you need to travel in order to navigate through climate change, or rather through climate devastation, so I like to call it.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree, but we're articulating it a little bit differently. The reason why I don't think COP matters all that much, or whatever they come out with, is indecision is basically already been decided. Because no government comes into COP.
So I think this is you kind of saying whatever they come out with, you're on that path, but that's not the point. The point is it matters because it decides on that path.
But I already know what the path will be, because it will be indecision.
And no, the path isn't that. The path is the path that you need to navigate yourself.
Absolutely.
For you, your business, and all the rest of it. That you need to do.
Yeah.
And that depends very strongly on what comes out of COP. Just because you know precisely what comes out of COP doesn't mean that you don't do that. I mean, if you go to a craps table, and you knew what the dice throw is going to be, you're going to place your bet, right?
A lot more.
You're going to place your bet, and then the fact that the dice throw has been decided doesn't change how you're going to place your bet. But the fact is that because those dice are going to fall that way, makes those decisions into that very important, because they determine how you're going to place your bet.
Correct.
They're very important. If they went into COP and the decisions and where you are, you look at it and you think, oh wow, might have some really amazing breakthrough or whatever it is. Where you are would be completely different in terms of what step you'd be planning to need to take. I'd be much more speculative. I think that actually you'd be quite reasonable to think Netflix valuation where it is 3 times over whatever it was before COVID, after all the changes and everything, it's not a bad thing. But if you actually go along and you think the dice are going to throw out that way, it's terrible.
Yeah. I think we're kind of arguing a little bit at cross purposes in that sense. I'm fairly confident with the indecision. I'm fairly confident with how it's going to be portrayed on the final statement of COP28. And
which makes COP28 very important, because you can be confident. Otherwise, it's not.
Okay.
It makes it hugely important.
Yeah.
Right?
If you frame it that way,
saying, you've already decided, you already know with good degree of confidence what the outcome is, and therefore you're placing your bets in this way. It makes COP28 extremely important. Yeah.
Okay. When you frame it that way, then yes.
Right. And this is the way that people are seeing it completely wrong.
Yeah.
They're not looking at the path that they need to take because of what COP28 will do. They're looking at COP28 as somehow being able to perform a miracle to do what each individual wants for themselves.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. That's a pipe dream.
And so they want it to be important for that reason, but it's important because the outcome of it is how you're going to have to navigate your path.
Yes, because it will lay bare the limitations of current political systems' ability to solve things.
Like just
being raised.
Whichever way. I mean, whichever way. Right? I don't want to get into the price at the moment question.
No, fair enough. But yes, it will expose the limitations of what a COP meeting can achieve.
And that's hugely important, hugely significant.
In that sense, it is. Yeah, I agree. Then we actually do agree fully on that. But only when you frame it as people having expected a different outcome, then
Well, there's a difference. Well, there's a disconnect, right? You and I, you and me. What is it that is different about us versus other people and what they see? And I think fundamentally there is that part where we are amongst the camp of people who less think about how can we change the world, as opposed to how do we survive it. And that's actually quite a large camp of people. But when you look in the climate space, it's largely filled with people who want to talk about how we can change the world.
Yeah. They speak with a very loud voice.
I'm not sure whether that thing was, but anyway, that's not to say we're not trying to do things that actually have some impact, but actually I think maybe that's the difference. We actually have a different sense of how we can get an impact.
I do think that a very common denominator between the two of us and quite a few other people we know, and dare I say it, of our age, is that we have become a lot more cynical than your average citizen, and a lot more battle hardened.
I think we just don't understand the average citizen very much. We say that.
No, but we are very cynical and battle hardened because of the life experience we've had with what we've been working with, and it does kind of shape you a certain way in how you see problems. And I'm terribly cynical in many ways, and it served me really well professionally. On the other hand, it probably makes me a quite difficult person to deal with in a lot of other instances.
But just a bit of party pooper.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm strangely enough, I'm totally fine with that. But
that's because you're not invited to any parties.
No, or in the words of my children, Dad, you have no friends. Okay, that's a bit harsher. But no, what I think it does mean is, I'm going to frame this very carefully so I don't offend anyone. But when I speak to a lot of people, particularly perhaps those who are a little bit younger than myself, but maybe even a fair bit older than my kids, there is a certain amount of naivety in their thinking about how people's mind work, because ultimately pretty much everyone operates in a perfectly rational way, trying to maximize their own outcome. And that goes back to you saying there's a lot of people wanting to change the world, failing to understand the rationale behind other people's decision making.
Well, we had a conversation earlier this week, right, where we got a group of people. We're talking about how do we make transformational ownership into an investment project, and transformational ownership, incidentally, is this idea where we would take, we would transform the ownership, literally as it says, of the oil, gas, and coal companies so that they become global commons in that way. And this is in the context of capitalist enterprise, not in the context of some social active action.
No.
So how we can use
that will never work. Let me say that.
To do that. And one of the people we had in our kind of preliminary talk about this was a professor at one of the Ivy League universities, who mentioned this thing between the difference between social benefits and the private benefits, where the social benefit of doing something like that is very obvious and is very clear, but the private benefit of it is the hurdle that we are unable to cross, or we don't know how to cross. So that's where the financial innovation, in many ways, and social innovation is needed. In that sense, sort of the genuine disruption of the capitalist system that empowers private benefits to be on the side of keeping oil and gas and coal in the ground rather than extracting them out and using it. So from that perspective, in what you're talking about and us wanting to do this, we're saying, if anything, we are far less cynical than many of the people, some of the people in the call, who certainly took the view that, you know, private benefits, the self-interest for private benefits would always make such ventures impossible. So I'm just kind of refuting this aspect of saying, okay, we've become cynical. If anything, we're not.
No, and I would extend that argument even further by saying, I actually believe in the extremist form of capitalism.
Yeah, which is what Argentina is about to face. I'm not sure to what extent that's exactly what you mean, but
no, but
about to face.
What's being articulated when you say that the private sector benefit, people are not prepared to give up on, and the people advocating that and saying, you know, oh, it won't work, is actually because they don't believe in capitalism. They believe in a skewed form of capitalism where certain people benefit.
No, I think it's not. I think, you know, in the path between where we are and that perfect utopia world, there is a massive mountain range with dragons and kind of, you know, poisonous spiders and snakes and all that stuff, and crossing it, that hurdle of crossing over it prevents it. It's not about not wanting it and so on. It's just that there are lots and lots of frictions and trench, and the longer something has, you know, Exxon CEO talking about how you can't unwind an industry built over 150 years overnight. It's essentially saying that, because what you're not unwinding, what the people were pointing out in our call, was not that you're unwinding an energy from infrastructure, but you're unwinding also the entrenched corruption that is in there. And that's the aspect of it. You may believe in this pure Adam Smith kind of capitalism, and he was very much in that way. But even Adam Smith, at a time writing Wealth of Nations, wrote in there to say, actually, the cartel of the owners versus the laborers, because the owners control the labor in that way, makes what he's talking about impossible. So to some extent, what we're trying to do is not necessarily the same. We're not trying to say in this perfect capitalist world it's okay. We're trying to find a path through this jungle with the poisonous snakes and the dragons and the spiders the size of dinner plates kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you can actually be advantageous for private interests to be there. So you tilt the corruption this way around. It's not that you get rid of corruption. There's going to be corruption whichever way it is.
That there will always be, but
into this way.
It's a very clean, very capitalist solution with the obvious capitalist benefits.
Yeah.
But one that will punish those who rely on systematic crony capitalism.
No, I think that's not what this necessarily may be. I think you may still have systematic crony capitalism, but the systematic crony capitalism now leans in the way of favoring the choice to keep oil and gas and coal in the ground.
Interesting spin. I've never really thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But I appreciate the line of thought. Yeah. I appreciate that line of thought.
If you try to sort of try and say what we're doing is to do away with, you know, kind of some of the corrupting instincts we have.
Well,
that makes it very hard. I think what happens is you're trying to make the choice the right one, whether the reason for the choice is bad or not.
Very, very interesting. I mean, these are really profound thoughts. So I think we've had a very interesting, certainly, and quite robust discussion about a lot of pros and cons here. And I think we will leave you all with that, for each and every one of you to ponder these questions in the way you seem and find fit.
And in closing, you spend your money frugally.
Exactly.
Whether you're an individual or corporate or whatever it may be, because you're going to need it.
Indeed. And actually, it matters.
Yes.
our economy is built upon the compounding of all our individual decisions.
Yes.
So whatever you do actually does matter. Thank you all.
Okay, we got to go. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. That was a fairly robust discussion. And as you could tell, we didn't exactly 100% agree on everything, but I think we agreed on some things.
Let me show you something. I was going to say that was particularly cheerful.
No, it was robust and honest.
Now, I don't know what you think of this. Okay, this is the Case-Shiller ratio.
Yeah.
And what it shows is essentially the price of a company versus the amount of money it's earning. So the higher this is, then the more you're paying for the future. You're paying for its potential in the future. The lower it is the fact that you're actually getting back in terms of what it gives you, what you pay into it very quickly. So that's the way to think about this. And this is since 1871. So it's good little bit of history. There's this period when I look at this, and forgive me for data mining this, as it were, where it's sort of moving around up and down, and there may be periods of exuberance and all the rest of it. And then something happened, and it looks like it's just want to explode. And even when it corrects, it just wants to explode again. And that's basically where we are. And this is what I call that climate Minsky moment. And this is the time when our emissions really shot up, right? 1960 on, and this is the time around here, 2005. After that, sort of 99. This is the point when our emissions really kind of grew up.
Yeah, but they actually. I agree with your chart. I think we have an upward tilt starting about something like 50 years ago, whatever. And the fundamental reason why that happened is essentially the unhinging of the value of money by the US abandoning Bretton Woods, which has led to unrestrained credit expansion.
So, and of course, credit means basically we borrow from our planet.
Exactly.
And this is the connection that the cheap money brigade failed to recognize during the post-financial crisis period. When we took interest rate down to zero, or we didn't, but the central banks took interest rate down to zero, it basically meant that debt was essentially the same as cash. And with cash, you basically go and you spend it.
Correct.
So, and you spend it, you draw in resources and you create more resources, you end up in the situation where we are. Now, but in looking back at the point of what's being discussed and where we are, we have this current situation where we are calling for more and more money as the way to come out of our climate crisis.
Yeah.
That money ultimately is generated by exploiting some resources somewhere. And that exploitation of that resources somewhere is supported principally by our use of oil and gas and coal. And we think that's okay because we think this is going to help us stop at some moment. We just need to spend this, get ourselves up there, get everything ready, and then it'll be okay. And then we will naturally hold ourselves to stop. That's what the COP conferences are really motivated about. That's what everyone going there, from the Blue Zone side anyway, is kind of very much arguing about. We need more money. We need more money. We need more money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very singular voice that essentially you can solve these problems just by creating more money or someone paying you a check and then we fix it. And I think that's a very naive way of looking at it.
As we said, right, the unsustainable truth, that sort of money doesn't get there, right?
No.
So, it's as Erkki says, as we mentioned Erkki Liikanen, the former finance minister and central bank governor of Finland, said, we tell how vividly the choice of an individual on the basis of ethics or economics impacts the outcome. I think that's kind of our choices matter. And it's not the money, it's our choices. It's the choices that makes the impact in that way. And we heard today, throughout our 3 days as we come towards the end of 3 days.
Mhm.
How it's about connecting with nature. My friend Koo yesterday, or this out yesterday, in the clip that didn't play at the
Yeah.
beginning but towards the end, and where she thinks she believes we have a problem, but what she feels, she doesn't know whether the physical problem is whatever it is. She doesn't feel qualified, but she does feel that we are failing to connect individually with nature. We're failing to do that. And the surprising thing I find is when we hear the voices of the young people from Kenya, Gambia, Ghana, from Pakistan, from India, from all those places, they are all about connecting with nature.
Yes.
So they do that,
Yes.
but the developed world doesn't. It's the less of those apparent, or maybe there's not that there are less of those voices. We're going to hear from Andrea Mason tomorrow, maybe the day after, and where we speak with her, and she's really a very powerful speaker and a powerful advocate of how to turn crisis into genuine opportunities, from victim to victorious, as she describes it in that way. And those are all about that personal transformation along that takes us forward. We spoke today with Adam Wasserman earlier, and he's also about how we individually need to make those choices. But the COP conference is driving not a narrative of how we can be together to face the crisis, to face the challenges, and therefore together we turn them into opportunities, but how we must take a particular stance and make sure the whole world moves to it, and demands that everybody moves together to that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a fair description.
And the problem we find with the cost is we can't afford it. We can't afford everybody to be buying the same goods, because then the cost of that goods goes shooting up. We can't afford for there to be only soya and corn grown. I mean, have you seen the market, the grain market? It's soya, it's wheat, it's corn, right?
Yeah.
But there are a vast number of other grains that we could be having. And we just concentrate on those very limited set. And we're going to hear later from Makoto, right? And he talks about the north wind and the sun, and I think that would be really instructive sort of set. But we have all become the north wind. We all want to tell everybody we need to triple renewable energy by 2030. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't. I'm saying, can we afford to? Because the other side of this is we have to accept we can't all use the amount of energy we do.
Yes, I think that is the absolutely first necessary step, that each and every one of us, every individual, need to kind of assess themselves about the choices we make in life.
And that's the basis of the choice. That's the origin of our rethinking choices.
Yeah.
It's not that the push to have the renewable energy is to try and avoid making the choice.
Correct.
Is to try and avoid what Koo talks about in terms of the truth.
Yeah.
The truth is, if we have a sustainability problem, it is that we are out of space, out of capacity in some space.
Yeah.
And when you're out of capacity, when your wallet has no money in it, or it's only got £3, or it's only got 40 quid and the lunch for two was 90.
Yeah.
You have to make some choices. You can't buy that up.
And we are not really prepared to make those choices yet. And
and I would argue we will never be willing to make those choices until we go past this climate Minsky moment in what I'm describing. Until we hit
I
this
don't
point.
disagree. I don't disagree, and I kind of, for all its faults,
and the essence of it is, sorry to interrupt, because I'm just in good flow and I kind of want to get my word in that way. But the essence of that is, it's not because we don't see that. It's because the essence of it is because we see it as being the right thing to do, to try and push everybody along and ignore whatever it is at the pace that they have. I mean, what we want, imagine this, right? I've spoken this somewhat, right? You know, the migration of wildebeests, yeah, and how they look like, and if you look from space and you think about what that looked like as an image, you know, you have this great vast group of animals that are crossing over along the way, and they go and they stretch over miles and miles and miles, right? And itself. So the migration itself is over vast. It's not just that they travel over vast distances, but the pack as they travel is over vast distances in that way.
Sure. Yeah.
So but what we want is for them all to be going in a row, basically. All going forward in a row in that way. And we're driven to that is because we want to borrow money from our governments. We want subsidies from the governments, as we know, you know, the best money to spend for investments is other people's money, right? Let them take the risk. Yeah. So we want our government's money. Let the government take the risk, even though we know it will bankrupt the government in doing so. And so that we are all charging forward and we're all pushing this signal to the government, to lobbying them and say, this is for the good of the citizens. We all have to do this. And as we're forcing that along, every country at the same time, the wind turbine makers are finding that they can't actually afford the money. They can't actually make profit. How can wind turbine makers not make profit at a time when this seems to be the one thing that we need? And it's exactly the same thing as we talk about in the California gold rush.
No, of course.
In a gold rush, whatever that form is, whether that gold is wind turbines or whether that is gold out of the ground, the inflation it causes because everybody is rushing to the same ultimately means that everybody loses out, except for those right at the very beginning or those who are very, very, kind of unethical in how they want to make their money.
Yeah. I think that's a very good description, and it might have happened, 170 years ago or whatever, but it's still extremely valid today, as it was then, because it's about the uncontrolled supply of wealth and what it does, or perceived wealth, not real wealth, perceived wealth.
Read the book.
Read the book, exactly. And I keep going back, to the Bretton Woods moment, because I think it's actually incredibly significant, and it doesn't have the importance that it should be attached to when you effectively choose not to have any more monetary constraint. And the reason it was abandoned was that the US couldn't finance its war in Vietnam and at the same time continue social spending programs. And the reason is, again, that you actually negotiate with those limits and say, you know what, we can go without gold. Now, it might have been a very imperfect system and it had lots of faults, but it's the mentality of that moment that I think is hugely significant, 50 years later. We don't accept the restraint that it actually imposed on us because we want to do as much things as we can. And then we don't mind borrowing from the future because it will become someone else's problem.
Well, I don't think we think that way. I mean, I don't think people deliberately go along and make things worse, but I think that we don't see it. The essence of why sort of things like the exuberance and those things exist is because we firmly believe in the message of the future. It's not that we believe we're borrowing from the future. We don't care about the future and we think it's someone else's problem. is because we would rather believe in the message of the future, or the kind of or the things about how doing this would be great. I mean, you look at the other side of the sustainability movement in that way. It's all about how we're creating a better future, right? The side that you talk about is the risks, the fact that we can't afford to take that much risk as we face unknown unknowns. But the other side of it is, because it's unknown, it actually promises an enormously beneficial future, and that's what drives this forward. And people believe it. People would like to sell that as the idea. You
can sell it as an idea all day long, but who the hell buys it?
Well, we do. Wow. I mean, look at it at the moment. We do, right? We're clearly buying it. Government's buying it. Everybody's buying it, because we are not actually, for all the talk out of the discussions this week about whether we should phase out or phase down or phase whatever oil and gas and coal. We know it's not going to happen.
No.
Not until someone is willing to buy a chunk of coal and say, or the rights to a chunk of coal in the ground and say, I have that right and it's not coming out.
Yep.
Not until regulators are willing to go and say, if you did that, then that makes a carbon credit that you can then sell and you can make money doing. Not
Correct.
Until people actually then go along and say, you know what, this is the way in which we should raise money to make our impact investing. To make
that,
the genuine
I wholeheartedly agree with. I'm not sure I agree with what you said before, and I think that is one of the relatively few points where we differ. I honestly don't think everyone believes in that rosy future, but they're happy going along making out that they believe in that future.
Well, then you're down to Greta and says, if you do that, then I believe you're evil.
That might very well be the case, and we can label them whatever way we want. But I do think it's a significant proportion of people who actually don't believe in that sort of super positive outcome, the future promises it all, and there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I actually think a significant proportion of those people don't believe that. But they're playing along because they hope to convince others to believe that.
That's a good way to a conversation we had with Makoto Okubo.
Yeah.
In a cafe in London, and he had been involved in this area. He describes himself as a Sherpa. He's there at the highest level, preparing all the materials and stuff, and he's been involved in, what did he say? He wrote a white paper. 26 pages, and then he realized no one read it apart from the authors, and so many papers go that way, and he ended up saying that he needed to reach beyond climate, which is what we want to do with This For You. We want to go beyond climate, in the sense that we don't know whether the people believe that way or the other, but the fact is that it is not on their scope, and they do not appreciate the choices that they do have or how they can make those choices. So in that way, what he's doing, I think, is extremely insightful. Do you want to bring him up?
Yeah. I think we should watch that clip, and it's worth remembering here. David managed to meet him in person, and I linked in because I couldn't make the trip. And he is one of the busiest people probably in the world. He travels so much that he's given up on the whole jet lag thing, because he's going from time zone to time zone at all.
We did ask him about that, and he says, jet lag is not a problem when you have no time zone.
Yeah, exactly. And the clip is not brilliant in its quality at all times, but it's such a serious and interesting discussion. We felt we just had to show it. And the reason is that you grab this guy when he has 10 spare minutes, because you don't know if you'll see him the next year again. And that was one of the moments when David managed to meet him. So,
well, we were very privileged to have at that time.
Yes, very, very privileged.
I think that's the better way of saying that.
Indeed it is. And I think we should just play the clip and you can judge for yourself what the kind of character is. We think he's super interesting.
Yeah. You doing it? I'm doing it.
You will have to do it, yes.
Okay. We were sitting there for that moment. I was thinking, someone's got to do this.
But it is a fantastic clip, and he's very, very broad in his perspective of how he sees those issues that we're facing, and you can judge for yourself. London Cafe with Makoto-san and David Coe while I'm at home, in the comfort of my home, I might add, on this rainy, ugly November day. Great to have you here. Thank you so much for making us fit into your very tight London schedule. Thank you. And
thank you very much. So let me quickly introduce myself very quickly because I have a different hats. So I'm working for the largest life insurance company in Japan, which is called Nippon Life, and I am responsible for international affairs, government relations of the company for so far 16 years. With United Nations, G20, APEC, OECD, IFRS Foundation, BIS, World Bank, IMF. This is my proper job in the company. So for the past 10 years, they have been serving as a Sherpa for the working group established by APEC finance ministers on the role of promoting the role of long-term institutional investors to support sustainable, resilient, inclusive development of Asia-Pacific region. So in APEC, I was serving somewhat like an icon for the high-level recommendation sent to finance ministers on what we can be done, what we can, for example, just achieve as the recommendation as a public-private partnership. That was a very serious job-related responsibility that they have been doing. So this year, 10th year already, and we have just got endorsement from APEC finance ministers during the APEC finance ministers meeting in San Francisco in November by actually the Secretary Yellen of the Department of Treasury Department of U.S. is actually was chairing this year's APEC. So this is my first involvement on the sustainable development. So we have been doing for 10 years. This means that we have already working more even before the SDGs was approved at the United Nations. So this is how I started working on this. And then as a Sherpa, I wrote maybe 100 pages in English about why it is important, what we can be done, what are the impacts. Nobody read. So we were wondering how many people actually read the document that I wrote. I'm not an English native speaker, but still I wrote 26 pages on the recommendation. Nobody, except for the co-authors, for those people who are engaged in SDGs by the big companies and investors who have already known the sustainable issues. And then we are feeling that unless we mobilize the people who don't care SDGs, who have never heard of climate actions or climate challenges, those people should be invited. So it's not insurance, it's not theory, it's not formula. So that's why I just thought that maybe entertainment would be a better way to gather people and just entertaining them at the same time educate them. So our goal is to replace completely the word education by edutainment. So we bring the entertainment for any level of education from children to grown-ups. So this is how we started this idea. And first I started from music. For example, we organize a music concert. We will bring the artists to the international meetings such as OECD meetings, APEC meetings, United Nations headquarters. I brought the musicians, and when I was making a speech, we organized a reception for United Nations Principal Responsible Investing at the Tokyo Tower, and I organized the concert. And that was sponsored by Nippon Life. That's that's why that concert was actually part of my life as a music producer. International phase of the largest asset owner in the country would be commingled now. So this is how so this is my life to Dubai. And then after Dubai, I immediately flying to Frankfurt and Munich. And then I meet the policymakers and we negotiate on what should be supported by us. So this is kind of my professional life. But also the for music side, I sometimes combine the Japanese musicians. And then since the foreign people love anime, so sometimes I organize the anime concerts. Like Ghibli movies, very, very popular here in London, for example. Totoro musical was all fully booked. Now we are turning the Totoro music to jazz. And we are planning to have a jazz concert here in London and Paris and also the Netherlands or maybe Italy. And then it's an anime concert, but it's a jazz or other Japanese traditional instruments or maybe rock and roll, many different ways of on the anime. And we call it SDGs Anime Festival. And SDGs, so S like Sailor Moon, Slam Dunk, and then like a D like a Demon Slayer, Dragon Ball, Disney, G like a Ghibli, Gundam, Gegen no Kitaro, Galaxy 1999. So it's like SDG,
very clever.
And we are having a concert and inviting other artists, and we are planning to do this in many different places. So next year, I'm thinking of having a concert and also a conference in Hong Kong, inviting the maybe ISSB as a keynote speakers and ended by my music performance. Another story is my life story. So my mother is actually a painter. But I had some of the tragic history of my life. So when I was 6 years old, the exact year for the expo in Osaka. So my father and mother divorced, and then I was just put under the custody of my father. And my mother was instructed not to see me for the next 20 years. That was a promise made. So for 20 years, my mother disappeared from my life completely. So I did not know even my mother was alive or not. So, and then all the things that reminded my mother has been completely destroyed and removed from my life. So from 6 to 26, my mother did not exist at all. And how my mother's dream was to make myself as a abstract painter, just like her. But that dream just put an end at the age when I was 6 years old. And then for the next 20 years, since she was not allowed to approach to me, she has something to remind me. For example, one of this is like a letter from the grandfather to my mother celebrating the birth of me. The second one is the notebook on which I draw some pictures about the Osaka Expo, and also some of the paintings actually was talking about biodiversity. So at the age of 6 already, I was very interested in that subject. And actually, that painting was trying to tell the people that there is the connection of the three things. The pollution from the factories would affect on the somewhat like a fish or birds. It's like a combination of fish and bird flying in the air.
Yeah.
And it was affected by the pollution of the factory ash, and that would have a negative impact on the paddy fields in agriculture. So this is kind of topic of the painting drawing that I draw at the age of 6. So it was a souvenir for 20 years when my mother left me. And then when we got together, the first one was the postcard from my mother when I was 26 years old, suddenly arrived in my house. And then she said that now I'm allowed to see you, so please come to my exhibition. And my mother was a member of the Salon de Paris in France. And abstract painting was like kind of, and then that book was returned to me, and that became the souvenir because my mother already passed away when I was in New York. So the idea is that now I'm teaming up with a digital artist in Japan, professional digital artist. He is very moved from this life story, and then he wanted to make this painting as a digital art. So now, based on the drawing that I drew at the age of 6, he's now creating the motion and put the color, and also it's a kind of a short movie type of art, digital art based on my drawing, and put the original music. He's also a musician, and inviting the singer, and the singer is actually singing over that original song. And then it's like digital art, music, and singing, thinking of bringing this digital art to Dubai. And then as the biodiversity, very early stage, 6 years old, it's like, I don't know, like 50 something years ago. And then it was
very
exact year that the Osaka Expo took place. And now we are coming back to Osaka for this year, 2025. So it's like kind of the, maybe this story might be one of the topic that we can promote during the Osaka in Dubai. How this digital art, what kind of value that can be put into this life story and digital art and the biodiversity story. And it was about the time that the United Nations started the environmental program. It was 50 years anniversary took place last year, so it means that a little bit before that. So I was talking about the biodiversity and environmental issues before the United Nations started working on the subject. But at the age of 8, I lost my mother already disappeared from my life, but I just continued to work on this. And at the age of 8, at the exactly the year that the United Nations started, UNEP. So I have the United Nations simulation at my house, inviting my elementary school students, pupil, to my house. And my grandfather from the fatherhood actually decorated my house with a national flag just to show that it's a United Nations headquarters. And then we talk about pollution of water, pollution of air, and world peace. The 3 topics has been discussed, and Secretary General was my staffed panda. And I just served for my Secretary General staffed panda, and I drafted all the agenda and reports and discussions. But we have already started working on this when I was 8 years old. So that kind of all my childhood actually influenced how I'm now working with United Nations and UN NGOs or the institutional investors to promote the things that I have already working on at the age of 6. So this is kind of very long story of my life.
Well, it's a fantastic story.
Is it possible to get a picture?
Yeah. So now I have a Facebook, so afterwards I can send the original drawing, and now some of the midway that because it's not finished yet, but the digital artist is actually sharing some of the work just in the social media to inform that he's now working on this project.
I see. I mean,
this
it's a fantastic
kind of
story,
background story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So all my
so clearly, art and music is very close to your heart. I mean, I think it's a marvelous story, all the way through, and clearly, in your life, art is very central, judging by the story you're telling. And
I was there at the first ISP board meeting in London in April 2001.
Yes. So tell us about 2 things. One is in Dubai, as you go to COP, how do you feel about the COP itself? And because you have a very different program. You planned a very different program than from others. And maybe describe a little bit about that.
So at this moment, I'm not very sure how the Dubai meeting will take place because the information is limited. And there are so many people working on so many different projects, but it doesn't seem that they communicate each other.
No.
So there are a lot of similar projects that are going on in parallel, but they're not very coordinated. So far I'm registered for 3 meetings at the same time on the same day, and then just allow me to be there if I want.
Yeah.
And then I will see how the schedule will go. Yeah, complicated. Because I'll be there only for limited time of the day, the session. For example, I arrive in the morning of 7th of December, and then I have to leave in the morning of 11th. So 7, 8, 9, 10. So only 4 days for me.
Yeah.
And then the big meeting actually took place on 4th of December, which is called Financial Track. So we are involved in the projects such as Net Zero Asset Owners Alliance, Net Zero Alliance, also G Funds. There is a meetings will take place on 4th of December, and I was asked to be there, potential speaker, but I have already issued my tickets, and I will be in 4th of December. I will be in Brussels, working on talking about European European standards. And then I go to Paris, and I be a young generations and business and society. So that is the topic. So typical topics for me was the international financial reporting standards or capital requirements, or risk management, systemic risk, even the resolution of the failure of the companies, or maybe sustainability issues. It's for the first time I was invited as young generation. I'm not young, but this is apparently because of Music for SDGs. I was invited by the organization to talk about the entertainment and insurance and the involvement of young people who care about the future. So without hesitation, I will talk about movies, fashion shows, art, music, educations, and how we can combine the sustainability and insurance and investments and young people, something like that. So this is a Paris meeting, so I cannot miss. I was not able to miss that.
No.
That's why I have chosen to be in Paris on 6th of December, and then I'm flying to Dubai just after.
And I was in Nairobi, and there was a storyteller talking about the environment, and he was talking about Spirited Away, how the pollution turned the river god into a demon. So this theme where the environment and what we're doing with it is really strong in the movies, in the arts.
When I had the jazz anime concert in New York in 2018, so we rented the theater next to the front of the Opera Majestic Theater. There was a small theater, and I just asked the Japanese jazz musicians based in New York. One of them is probably the best jazz guitarist in the history of Japan in the US. And then asked them to perform the Ghibli music songs in jazz. And we had a jazz concert, and I acted like MC. And then I talked a little bit about story about each of the Ghibli and anime movies, and relationship is a different SDGs topic. For example, when I talk about education of children, and the background music was BGM like from Totoro, the My Neighbor Totoro. And then when I talk about the environmental issues, like coming from Disney, Pocahontas, and also Mononoke, Princess Mononoke is also directly from talking about the environmental protection. So this kind of related subject. And then also we talk about disaster risk reduction, and we just ask singers to sing some Remember Me from COP28, dying parents to the children is connected with, there is topic. So I do this all the time. So I gave a lecture at the university for the past 5 years in Keio University, the most prestigious private university in Japan, and they talking about topics in the musical form. So entire lecture has been done in the musical form, so music does not stop. So when the music changes, the students would know the topic has been changed. So, and then the movies is related with the topic, so they would know the topic I'm talking about. And if the students remember what kind of songs was there, they remember my core students in Japan. This is already 5th year, and a number of universities are now being expanded. And then probably we are thinking of exporting this idea to the Asian country. Something that I do with anime. And I'm thinking of bringing the same musicians to Hong Kong when we have a conference, the sustainability conference in Hong Kong. So this starting from Teresa, the opening remark speaker, and we are hopefully inviting the Emmanuel Pavel, the president of ISSB from Frankfurt, and we will discuss insurance regulations, sustainability reporting. But at the end, toward the ending, the reception time, we will have a concert inviting the singers and musicians, but on the SDGs topic. So this is something that I'm planning to do in Hong Kong next year.
You're a very busy guy. Lots of fingers in many pots.
Something like that.
Yeah, I mean, so from the other side of the the bigwigs, who in some ways people view as the ones who make the decisions. How are they stirred up by the art and the music, by what you do? Does it soften their position? Because very often they end up crystallizing, this is where I stand, this is where our company is, this is our policy, and it's very hard to shift.
So music, art, movies, fashion shows, or maybe education session, whatever. I do some comedies too. Those are just a means for the implementation. So it can be very flexible. Whatever, there's nothing I was not allowed to do. I can use tea ceremony if you want. So there are just a different means for the implementation of the sustainability oriented high-level recommendations.
That's really, really interesting, because the governments have made their commitments to emission cuts, and they've done this since 2015, 2016, and so far we've been increasing it. So the implementation needs what you're describing, I think, because the very policy-driven implementation just is not reaching.
Yeah. Currently, the problem is that when I was invited as a panelist at the World Bank IMF conference in Washington, D.C., so you can imagine how serious the atmosphere was, but I just act like normal in my work way. So I use comedies. I can imitate different interactions, and I entertain the audience during the World Bank IMF conference. And I talked about the fairy tale of my 8-year-old daughter, the North Wind and Sun. And this Aesop story is telling us a very important learning. So the North Wind and Sun are competing each other to find out which one is more powerful. And just like they are testing just like they are competing each other, how they remove the coat of the gentleman on the street. The north wind couldn't make it, and then the sun just brought the sunshine, and it's too warm, and the man removed his coat on his own. That was kind of very simple, and I brought this book to IMF World Bank conference, and it was well received because the European representative was from Greece, and he was happy that I talked about Greek book. Yes, so it ended up with a very good success. Europe, they're trying to have very stringent requirements and too excessive requirements on the green investments to avoid, because otherwise, and the customers have little choice to choose among the different options. And then because of the disclosure requirements, it becomes costly and costly. So green investment is more expensive than the other investments. So now the investors hesitate to invest because of the lower return on this. Not because of the nature of the investment, but because of the excessive regulatory requirements. So now this is what I'm trying to communicate with the policymakers. So learn from this story. So we need to produce something like a sun to incentivize the players. Like I always use the analogies and jokes to deliver my message. That has been my tradition for past 20 years.
Richard and I were having this conversation yesterday about how you allow people the ability to make the better choice in an easier way.
Yeah.
And I think what you're saying is actually a little bit more than that, because you want them to really enjoy it as well.
And when I talk about this North Wind and Sun story to the European authorities when I visited Europe, so she challenged against me. So there's like in the US they are talking about there are a lot of politicians who are going to the anti-ESG, just like threatening the companies to go into the sustainability investments to be removed from the business, something like that. It's called anti-ESG kind of movements. And then European authorities tell me that, so are you telling us that US is the sun and Europe is North Wind? And I responded, no, this is not what I meant. US is South Wind.
Yes. Yes.
So that's something like that.
Yes, they're both winds trying to force you.
Yeah, the force winds.
Yes.
So we are talking about sun.
Yes. How do you feel about, certainly from the music side, how do you think music have influenced this?
I think music and art through history has always played an incredibly important role in portraying more than what it says on the tin. Truly great art does not only show a beautiful painting on a canvas or a beautiful object that's been sculptured. Truly great art also makes you reflect and think what's behind the expression. And I think it will always remain the case. And I think perhaps not as obviously, but I think the same thing goes for music. That music has a unique ability to capture and express emotions like no other medium has. But I think through history, art and music has been incredibly important and actually it's been created by some of the most forward thinkers we've had on the planet. But at the time, they were perhaps not recognized as such forward thinkers, and they were actually facing backlashes. And I don't think that's changing. I think it will always be the case.
So
that whenever you push new ideas through art and music, there will be a resistance, because forward thinkers will always meet resistance.
You traveled a lot. You've seen many different places, and you've been involved, as you say, since you were 6. You've been aware of this need for better respect and better connection with the world, with nature, and from that, how do you feel looking forward? Are you optimistic, or are you where do you sit in where we are today? I mean, this year, the science tells us we have failed to meet many of the things. We have had moments when we've crossed over that hurdle of 1.5 degrees. We have seen the Amazon River in a dry state more than it has ever been. But do you feel from the people's side? How do you feel that yourself?
So I think if you look at the documents of SDGs document adopted in 2015 September, there are 17 SDGs, and you have a lot of specific requirements for each of the SDGs. There are a lot, and then originally it was supposed to be completed by
2030. Yes.
2030, right?
Yes.
We are already going to 2024.
Yes.
So if you ask me if I'm optimistic of achieving all of those, I'd say that skeptical.
Yes.
So I don't know how many people actually think that all of those will be completed by 2030. It's quite challenging at this moment.
Yes.
Now we need to focus on something, at least the most prioritized ones. Because if you say that, oh, that's impossible, and if you don't do anything, it will not change the world at all. So we need to focus on something very crucial, and that can be done. So my company has chosen the different aspects, but usually the environment and the human rights, and also the community related, the community-related matters is like promoting the business. Those three aspects as highest priority, and we are focusing on those topics. We cannot focus on everything. So, and I don't think the insurance company should be responsible for all the SDGs. So now at least some of the topics we are going to proceed. Important is that we should have a good balance. We say balance of yin and yang, actually to achieving the goal for climate, but not only for the reduction of CO2. We feel that emphasis was too much on the reduction of CO2 emissions, but but only consequence is the reduction of the future emission of CO2. That will not solve the problem. That will just delay the problem a little bit.
Right.
But it does not solve the fundamental situations. So we need to work both on the biodiversity, or maybe protecting the forests. So if you destroy the forest for creating the renewable energy power plants, so we are very skeptical about this kind of solutions. So we need to have a good balance between the biodiversity and also the climate actions. So this is one of the standpoints, and we are helping the industry to transform on their own, just like a sun. And then in APEC, the most important keyword is transition. So transition finance, the most most discussed item, especially in Asia Pacific. So when the energy industry is trying to transform, they need some funding. So then we are trying to serve as a financial institution, how we can fund those transition rather than divest from those industry at day one. So the initial, some of the activists did not understand this. And if they just have a transition finance, that would keep some funding for the energy intense industry, and we are criticized by doing so. But if we sell everything and remove all the funding from those companies, so they cannot actually transform their business. Yeah. So this is so the issue. So we would like to have a pragmatic approach, is to help them. But the third point is that we are the largest asset owners. It means that the largest stock owners of those companies traded in Tokyo market. We are the largest in the private sector. So then we have 7,000 companies whose shares are owned by us. And we have a dialogue with each one of them and report back to us how they plan to transform their business toward sustainability. So this is a kind of, we are not like a cowpass. We are very kind. We are not like, I mean, I don't think they are afraid of us. But still, we try to communicate with them to help them understand that our shareholders want them to change their business.
Yeah. I think one of the things you I mean, from Richard and myself, we have this aspect by which at the moment where people invest, for example, in renewable energy, the way we think of it is you want to bring in an extra layer where you essentially keep the reserves of the coal and the gas and the oil. You essentially use the money in terms of paying to keep those in the ground, and that allow for that payment to be the one that goes into the investments. So you achieve in part what you're describing there. But it's very interesting where you go and say, where do you make that investment itself? Because again, the climate finance discussions have emphasized scale over the purpose of actually achieving a balanced world. That's kind of how I see and what you're reflecting.
And especially important thing is some of the activists went very extreme, so they are just breaking into the international meetings.
Yeah.
And just physically stop the meetings, and those are regarded as a terrorist.
Yes.
And now some of the activists actually seeing from us those groups that we need to call security guards. So this is bad for climate actions because that has a reputation of destroying. And so we need to go to the stage and then exchange the rational discussions with investors and consumers and policymakers, not just breaking to the meeting and the physical threat to those participants. So this happens all the time. So
yeah. Richard?
No, I think it's a pretty sad reflection and statement over where we are, that solving climate issues on a planet is going to invariably force us all to pull together and come together, because otherwise we will not be able to deal with it and we will not have a positive outcome. And what you're seeing instead at the moment is significantly more polarization. There is no willingness to listen to another point of view. And I don't think that's going to bring any form of end result. You actually need to solve it together, because we all inhabit the same space. That's the first physical constraint you're facing, that you cannot really opt out and think you can get away with it because we're all living here. And secondly, like you're pointing out with the increased polarization and even violence around climate actions, just increases the alienation of a lot of people that simply cannot square the circle, or it's not a good path forward, and we need to rethink that whole approach, because it will require us to actually come together. Otherwise we will not be able to solve it, and you need to listen to the other point of view. It's not as simple as good and evil. That is a simplification that will not be conducive to reaching the targets we want to reach and the end goal we want to reach, which is kind of to better our planet and our perpetual ability to have life surviving on the planet.
Have you found that certain cultures are more able to follow this kind of thinking?
Since I have been working on the policy matters with the government relations kind of people, so everywhere there's a policies. So, but at this moment, the UK governments are closer in terms of feeling to us. So they are helping the business to have a transition. So it's among the European nations, actually UK is actually more friendly to our approach at this moment. And then in the European EU, this UK rather than continental Europe. So Hong Kong, other like Singapore, those are very pragmatic authorities. So we try to international negotiations. So in Asia, we will say that we try to avoid copy and paste from the EU rule. UK is looking at the external market rather than internal European markets. So the UK rule is more growth oriented. US is they don't care European regulations, so there's no 0% for US to follow Europe approach. So this discussion does not exist.
No. So coming back to the music and the art. So what piece of music do you find, most uplift you?
So I'm always a part of jazz team. So I invite a lot of different musicians in a different genre, and I invite the usually I like the fusions. So for example, my partner artist based in London is actually a Japanese fusion with Western culture. So it's like wearing kimono as a dress and having the European songs but with Japanese instruments. This kind of fusion is very typical way for us to entertain people. And also I'm singing anime songs in jazz, bossa nova, samba, merengue.
Wow.
So this is my style. So I like jazz. And we invite a lot of different people, like a musical actress. I'm training UK British harpist to practice Japanese anime songs. She is gonna play the beautiful anime song with harp. So I want to have a diversity in my concert. And one of the amazing concert music piece which was experienced during the APEC meeting, one of the APEC meeting in Jakarta, Indonesia. So that was a very fantastic night. It was a gala dinner hosted by APEC Indonesia. And then generous enough to give away music instruments to all the participants gathering for gala dinner. So everyone, just like a souvenir. But this instrument is called angklung. It's a bamboo-made simple music instruments in Indonesia, which have only one instruments have a number 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. In my case, I got 5. This means G. So if we just do this, the sound of G.
Yeah.
And if you have given 4, it means F. So each one is given only one sound. And then conductor is just showing everyone. And if you see your number is pointed, you just do this. And aggregate, it become a music. Believe or not, we just perform the Bohemian Rhapsody of Queen together. And then after this song, we had a standing ovation. It was an APEC gala dinner. Do you know what country, what economy represented? China, Taiwan, already impressive, no?
Yes. Oh yes. Oh yes.
US, Russia,
Yes.
Japan, Korea.
Yes.
No, already 6, but we had 21.
Yes.
Can you believe? We just had the Bohemian Rhapsody together and standing ovation. So this is a perfect evidence that the music connects the people beyond politics.
Of course.
That's an amazing story, and I'm a little bit cognizant about time because I know you have an important event later on tonight, and I think we must be close to the point where you need to make your journey.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's fascinating what you say, and the thing which Richard and I have always expressed is we wish to bring 1 billion of voices into a symphony together, a symphony of 1 billion voices. Yeah. And I think you've achieved that. You're actually achieving it.
I will send the URL of the We Are the World. So usually we are just, when we had online music events, the first song or last song is typically We Are the World by Berklee College of Music.
Yes.
And it's like in the first half is the like inviting the musicians from all over the world using the music instruments, the local music instruments in different countries. The last part is a translation. The We Are the World is translated into different languages, like Chinese, Japanese, Korean, and Italian, and then Hebrew and Arabic together.
Yes.
So this is another way to show the evidence that music can go beyond politics.
It's been amazing. Thank you for taking part with
Yeah.
our
And thank you for your
program.
time.
It's for you.
All I can say is, Makoto-san, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure catching you on a fireside chat on a very quick visit to London. Thank you so much for your infinite wisdom and your ideas and your passion for the things that matter. It's a privilege to have spent this time with you. Okay.
There you go.
Indeed, there he is. Makoto-san, live from a London cafe, impairing extraordinary words of wisdom, I think. And he is just such a terrific character. And I'm a bit envious of David, who actually got to spend some physical time with him. But there you are. It's the end of today. We coming back, obviously, tomorrow, 7 o'clock Tokyo, as usual. 7 o'clock in Karachi and 7 o'clock in London. Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode. We shall return. Like Arnie said once, I'll be back. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you, everybody. It's been an amazing third day of COP, and we hope you continue to join us. And we promise with more reflections from Richard and myself about the unsustainable truth. And we hopefully will be able to bring along some other perspectives of just what the transition means for each and every one of us. Thank you.
Thank you.